Chapter 1358. She saw that the right half of the woman's face was smooth and white, very beautiful, but the left half of her face was full of potholes and hideous scars, looking very terrifying. With her shout, everyone's eyes focused on her. That woman also turned her face, exposing her whole face to Qing Mingyue's eyes. She only heard her say coldly, "I have traveled a long way to come here alone, and I also need a good rest. Miss, please go back." Her voice was very hoarse, and when she spoke, it was like someone was using a small hook to scratch at the tip of one's heart, making one couldn't help but shiver. With such a clear rejection, normal people wouldn't say anything more. But Qing Mingyue was different. She looked innocent and cute on the surface, but her personality was actually the most overbearing. If she wanted something, she wouldn't be willing to give up if she couldn't get it. Qing Mingyue looked at Gu Xingyin with some difficulty. "But miss, there are more than 10 of us, it's impossible for others to sleep in the upper rooms, and leave one person to sleep in another room, right? That's not fair." She frowned, as if this matter really made it difficult for her. But her eyes were looking at Gu Xingyin. If this woman knew what she meant, she would obediently give up the room. Qing Mingyue suddenly felt gloomy. Why didn't master let her introduce herself? If she said who she was, who her master was, and who her senior brother was, this woman would have taken the initiative to give up the room to them. Then she saw the woman looking at her, with obvious ridicule on her face, as if she saw through all the little thoughts in her heart. "Miss, if you are in a difficult position, you can stay in another room and let others stay in the upper rooms." How is it difficult? Or is it that? Gu Xingyin cast a glance at her, but her hoarse voice sounded in the entire inn, "Miss, you feel that you are a cut above others, and others can stay in the other rooms, but you can't?" Qing Mingyue's face turned ashen. Of course she looked down on the other rooms, but she couldn't say this out loud, otherwise the perfect image she had painstakingly built for so many years would definitely be ruined. Moreover, in her life, this was the second time she met someone who didn't give her face. The first one was the demon sect leader. Thinking of that woman whose beauty overshadowed her own, Qing Mingyue's heart was filled with a trace of resentment. Along with it, she looked at the woman in front of her with even more disdain. She looked at Gu Xingyin and said in disbelief, "Miss, why are you so mean? I've always treated you with respect, and I've also seriously asked for your opinion. Why are you being so overbearing?" The woman snorted coldly and turned around. Clearly, she couldn't be bothered with her. Qing Mingyue didn't expect her to be like this. She stood there, not knowing whether to leave or stay. Fortunately, a godly assist appeared at this moment. There were many admirers of Qing Mingyue among the group of martial artists. Now that they saw their goddess being bullied, they only felt that the sense of justice in their hearts was about to overflow from their chests. He arrived in front of the table in a few steps and was about to open the eyes of the goddess. When he saw the woman's face, he instantly felt more confident. "You ugly freak, Miss Mingyue is such a gentle girl, how can you speak so viciously?" The woman was clearly annoyed as she coldly shouted, "Whose dog is this, barking non-stop in my ear?" Chapter 1359. As soon as she said that, the man who stood up for his goddess could not hold it in any longer. He immediately drew his sword and shouted, "I thought you were a woman and wanted to be polite to you. But it turns out that there are differences between women and men. Today, I will teach you how to speak properly." The long sword in his hand flashed and he slashed at the table in front of the woman. The woman looked at him coldly. This man was a little stupid, but he was not evil. The sword was so fast that it even brought up a gust of wind. It was obvious that this man's skills were not bad. However, in the next moment, he was sent flying. He was actually thrown out by someone. Other than Zhu Yu and Mu Qingfeng, no one saw the mysterious woman's actions clearly. It was also at this moment that Qing Mingyue felt a little scared. This was because she realized that this woman seemed to be much more powerful than she had expected. The mysterious woman looked at Qing Mingyue, who was standing at the side, and sneered, "What a gentle and kind Miss Mingyue." Everyone could hear the sarcasm in her words. The mysterious woman stood up, turned around, and headed upstairs. What a bummer. A table full of good food had to be smelled by someone. It was obvious who was the culprit behind the smelly dishes. The other two people sitting at the table realized that they could not afford to offend either party. They sat there quietly and ate. Although no one said anything, Qing Mingyue felt that these people must be laughing at her in their hearts. She dug her nails into her palms and used the pain to suppress the urge to rush up and chop this woman into pieces. Calm down, Qing Mingyue. Taking revenge personally was the most foolish thing to do. What was the most powerful ability of a woman? It was to make a man willingly and obediently do things for her. So she looked at Zhu Yu with an aggrieved expression. Based on the strength that this woman had shown, only her senior brother and master had a chance of defeating her. However, Zhu Yu only looked at the staircase with a strange gaze, and then directly said to the innkeeper, "Just prepare an ordinary room for me." Qing Mingyue panicked when she heard that. "Senior brother, how can you sleep in an ordinary room?" Zhu Yu said curiously, "This room is prepared for people to stay in. Why can't I stay in it if others can?" His words were actually the same as the mysterious woman's. This also showed his attitude towards this matter. He did not approve of Qing Mingyue's actions. Qing Mingyue's face paled for a while. She never thought that her senior brother would not give her any face in front of so many people. Zhu Yu, on the other hand, didn't think too much about it. His attention was now on another matter. In the dead of night, a door suddenly made a very soft sound. If it was an ordinary person, they definitely wouldn't have noticed it. However, whether it was the people inside or outside the door, none of them were ordinary people. The moment Zhu Yu entered the room, she saw a woman sitting quietly at the table by the window. It was obvious that she had been waiting for a long time. His gentle face immediately broke into a joyful smile. If Qing Mingyue saw it, she would probably die of anger. She had put in so much effort, but all she got in return was Zhu Yu's indifference. However, Zhu Yu revealed such a joyful expression the moment he saw this woman. Chapter 1360. In order to avoid being noticed, there was no light in the room. However, whether it was Zhu Yu or that woman, both of them could see each other clearly. If there were other people here, they would be very surprised to find that the person who lived in this room was a woman with half of her face destroyed. However, the person sitting at the table was clearly a woman with complete facial features. No, it was not appropriate to say that she was complete. She was obviously a woman with perfect facial features. She sat by the window, and the gauzy moonlight shone on her face through the window. There was a kind of beauty that did not belong to the mortal world. Zhu Yu smiled and walked to her side. He hugged her without any hesitation. "Were you waiting for me?" That's right, the woman with half of her face scarred in the day was Gu Xingyin. Gu Xingyin glanced at him and did not struggle. "Maybe I was waiting for you, maybe I wasn't waiting for you." Zhu Yu knew what she meant. She wanted to see if he could recognize her. Although Gu Xingyin was confident in her lover, she was still very happy when Zhu Yu really recognized her. Of course, she was also curious. "How did you recognize me?" She thought that her disguise was very good. Zhu Yu sniffed her hair and said softly, "No matter what you look like, I can recognize you at a glance. Other than you, who else can make me lose control of my heart at first sight?" To Zhu Yu, there seemed to be something on Wu Yeli's body that was firmly attracting him. It was not some kind of drug-controlling method, but some kind of shackle in the soul. She was born to belong to him. He was very sure of this. Gu Xingyin smiled softly. "Maybe we were a couple in our previous life?" Zhu Yu had never believed in such things, but when he heard Gu Xingyin's words, he felt that it was very reasonable. He nodded. "It must be the same. Next time, let's go to the Moon Temple and let him bless us so that we can be together forever." Gu Xingyin could not help but laugh. This man is really good at saying sweet nothings. However, she liked it this way. Just like that, the two of them hugged each other quietly, enjoying the warm feeling of their breaths blending together in the darkness. "That's right." Zhu Yu suddenly spoke. "Why are you here?" He was a little puzzled. Gu Xingyin did not answer. If she couldn't even figure out such a simple thing, then there was no need to ask her. She could just go and figure it out herself. Zhu Yu found it strange that Gu Xingyin did not reply. However, a thought that made him ecstatic appeared in his mind. He asked cautiously, "For me?" There was still no reply. However, Zhu Yu already knew the answer. The corners of his mouth curled up as if fireworks were blooming in his heart. He couldn't help but hug the person in his arms tighter, but he heard Gu Xingyin complain, "Be gentle, I can't breathe." When Zhu Yu heard that, he loosened his embrace a little and lowered his head to whisper in Gu Xingyin's ear. Gu Xingyin's ears turned red, and she snorted softly, "I used to hear those people from the Central Plains praise you as an upright gentleman. If they knew that a gentleman like you not only sneaked into a woman's room at night, but also said such things, I wonder what they would think." Chapter 1361. Zhu Yu lowered his head and chuckled. "Who cares what they think? What does it have to do with you and me what others think?" Gu Xingyin stopped talking. Zhu Yu was right. Both of them were the top figures in the martial arts world. What did the thoughts of others have to do with them? Unknowingly, it was already late at night. Gu Xingyin urged Zhu Yu to leave quickly. "You still have to travel tomorrow. Go and rest." Zhu Yu was reluctant to leave, but he knew that he was not the only one who had to travel. She would follow him as well. She also needed to rest. He let go of her and whispered into Gu Xingyin's ear, "I'm leaving." Like a gust of wind, the man disappeared from the room in the blink of an eye. Gu Xingyin let out a sigh of relief when the man's aura disappeared completely. She reached out her hand and touched her numb ears. Really, this man was not serious at all. The system, who had been watching silently, said, "Host, can you wipe that sweet smile off your face and let's talk properly?" The system, who was single, felt helpless when it saw the host and her partner being like this every day. In principle, as a system, it did not have the 7 emotions and 6 desires of a human. Gu Xingyin lay on the bed and soon fell asleep. She had a very sweet dream. In the dream, the man kept whispering into her ear, "You will be my baby for life." The next day, when Qing Mingyue and the rest woke up, they realized that the mysterious woman had already disappeared. Qing Mingyue had been holding a grudge against her. She was so angry that she did not sleep last night. She kept thinking about how to teach her a lesson. Who would have thought that the woman would disappear just like that? She went to the hotel and asked the hotel owner. The result was that the mysterious customer had checked out and left at dawn. Qing Mingyue was furious, but there was nothing she could do. She could only swear in her heart that she would not meet this woman again. Otherwise, she would teach her a lesson. It was a pity that she would not be able to meet that woman again in this lifetime. This was because Gu Xingyin had prepared many disguises. Along the way, other than Zhu Yu, no one knew that someone had been following them silently. Sometimes, she was a weak girl with a pitiful background. Sometimes, she was an old woman with wrinkled skin. Sometimes, she was even a hot-blooded young man. Even Zhu Yu felt helpless in the end. How could this person make so many perfect disguises? Gu Xingyin said, "My disguise skills are all thanks to the almighty elders of the devil sect. My acting skills are cultivated after countless mission worlds." Finally, after more than 10 days, the party returned to Martial Union's location. On the first day after returning to Martial Union, Mu Qingfeng impatiently searched for several famous divine doctors to treat Zhu Yu. Unfortunately, the conclusion of these doctors was no different from that of the demonic sect's miracle doctor. Zhu Yu didn't feel disappointed when she heard the results. Instead, she was worried that Gu Xingyin might be disappointed. After all, the other party had always hoped that he could recover his memories as soon as possible. Otherwise, she wouldn't be at ease. On the other hand, when Martial Union's guild master returned, countless people came to congratulate him. Among them, there were many who tried to find out more about the situation. Zhu Yu dealt with them flawlessly. However, she felt even more annoyed in her heart. Chapter 1362. Instead of thinking about improving their strength, these people of the martial arts world spent all their time scheming against each other. Zhu Yu had spent some time in the demon sect, so Gu Xingyin had nothing to hide from him. Hence, Zhu Yu had a clearer understanding of the demon sect's abilities. There would be no difference if there was no comparison. In Zhu Yu's opinion, the martial arts world in the Central Plains had no advantage over the demon sect in terms of the younger generation or the combat power of the top experts. These people in the martial arts world were still complacent and looked down on the so-called barbarians outside the borders. Zhu Yu felt that these people were like frogs in a well, looking at the sky. Qing Mingyue, on the other hand, returned to her home after returning to the martial union. Qing Zhen was already at an advanced age. He doted on his only daughter, Qing Mingyue, to the extent that he would grant her every request. When Qing Mingyue blushed and made such a request, he was a little surprised. "You want me to propose marriage now?" Qing Mingyue was talking to him about this matter just now. Although Qing Zhen felt that it was inappropriate for a girl to take the initiative to mention this, it was not a problem for a girl to be straightforward and generous. However, he frowned. "Zhu Yu has lost his memory now. Why don't we wait for him to regain his memory before I go and talk to your master?" The news of Zhu Yu losing his memory had been sealed. However, Qing Zhen, a senior in the martial arts world, knew about it. Qing Mingyue became anxious when she heard her father's words. She wanted to take advantage of the fact that her senior brother had lost his memory to get married. After all, she knew very well what kind of attitude her senior brother had towards her. Her senior brother did not like her. If he had regained his memory, he would never have agreed to marry her. However, it was different now. Her senior brother had lost all his memory. If her master were to persuade him, she would be by his side wholeheartedly. She did not believe that her senior brother would not be tempted at all. However, Qing Mingyue did not think about it. She had followed Zhu Yu for more than 10 years. Both of them grew up together. No one could compare to her in terms of being in a favorable position. However, even under such circumstances, she could not capture Zhu Yu's heart, let alone now. She was relentless, and Qing Zhen had no way of dealing with this daughter of his, so he agreed to her request. Since he had promised his daughter, Qing Zhen personally made a trip to Martial Union 2 days later. He went to look for Mu Qingfeng. Mu Qingfeng hesitated when he heard his intentions. "Brother Qing, as you know, doesn't have any memories of his past. I'm afraid it's not appropriate to make a rash decision now." Qing Zhen stroked his beard and smiled. "Brother Qingfeng, you're overthinking. My Mingyu grew up with Zhu Yu and both of them are under your tutelage. They are simply a match made in heaven." Mu Qingfeng was a little tempted. In his heart, his eldest disciple and youngest disciple were undoubtedly a perfect match. However, he had always been a good master who respected his disciples. Moreover, his eldest disciple was now the leader of the Wulin Alliance. It was not appropriate for him to make a decision on his life. Therefore, Mu Qingfeng said, "Why don't I call you over and ask for his opinion, Brother Qing?" Qing Zhen did not object when he heard this. In his opinion, his Mingyu was naturally the best. No one could possibly reject her. Chapter 1363. When Zhu Yu heard that his master had invited him, he hurriedly rushed over. Even though he had lost his memory, he was still very sensitive to people's emotions. He could feel Mu Qingfeng's care and concern for him. He held a great deal of respect for this master of his. When he saw Qing Zhen sitting beside his master, he was surprised. "May I know who this is?" Mu Qingfeng said, "This is your junior sister Mingyue's father, Senior Qing Zhen." Zhu Yu bowed. Qing Zhen always had a good impression of Zhu Yu. Even though he had lost his memory, he was polite and courteous. His aura was steady and his martial arts had not changed. He was very satisfied. He could not help but say, "Nephew Zhu Yu, I am here today for my Mingyue. What do you think of my Mingyue?" Zhu Yu's heart skipped a beat. He roughly knew the purpose of Uncle Cheng's visit. He replied calmly, "Junior sister Mingyue is naive and cute. She will definitely make a name for herself in the martial arts world." "That's not what I want to ask." Qing Zhen muttered in his heart. He looked at Zhu Yu, who had a gentle expression, and went straight to the point. "Nephew, I see that you and my Mingyue are childhood sweethearts. You are a perfect match for each other. I would like to become in-laws with your master. What do you think?" Zhu Yu had already expected this. He was not surprised when he heard this. He raised his head and looked into Qingzhen's eyes. I only treat junior sister Mingyue as a brother. There are no romantic feelings between us. Qingzhen was furious. No matter how beautiful Zhu Yu's words were, in his ears, it sounded like he was looking down on his daughter. He said in a low voice, it seems that you have high standards. You don't even like my Mingyue, the most beautiful woman in the martial arts world. Zhu Yu bowed slightly. I don't mean that. Qingzhen snorted angrily. He did not say anything else and left with a flick of his sleeve. Zhu Yu looked at his back and frowned. This senior Cheng, even if he is a senior in the martial arts world, is too rude. He turned around and saw that his master's expression was not good. He said apologetically, I have made master angry. Mu Qingfeng shook his head and looked at him. This has nothing to do with you. Life's major events were something that would last a lifetime. If one had no feelings for it, it would be a torment in the future. Your Uncle Cheng is a little narrow-minded. Zhu Yu did not say anything. In his opinion, Senior Cheng wasn't just narrow-minded. How was he behaving like a virtuous and respected senior? But you, do you really not like your junior sister? Mu Qingfeng felt that it was a pity. Zhu Yu shook his head. I have no such intentions towards you. After thinking about it, in order to prevent his master from agreeing to some strange things in the future, he still said, disciple's heart already belongs to someone. Mu Qingfeng's interest was piqued. Oh. Which family did she come from? Do I know him? When Zhu Yu saw the expression on his master's face, he couldn't bear it. He was afraid that if he really said that name, his master would have to retract his smile. However, he didn't want to lie about such things, so he said in a steady voice, Master has seen the person that disciple likes before. She is the leader of the demon sect. Wu Yili. Mu Qingfeng's hand that was holding the teacup paused. Some tea spilled from the teacup onto the back of his hand. Who did you just say? He suspected that he had heard wrongly. Chapter 1364. Mu Qingfeng really hoped that he had misheard. But in the next moment, his disciple repeated himself clearly. This disciple said that the person this disciple likes is the current demon sect's leader, Wu Yili. The smile on Mu Qingfeng's face disappeared. He did not reveal too much emotion and only asked with a serious expression, do you know what you are saying? Zhu Yu looked at his master and nodded, this disciple understands. Mu Qingfeng said in a deep voice, do you know what your identity represents? Do you know what the identity of the demon sect's leader represents? Zhu Yu still nodded, this disciple knows. Mu Qingfeng asked again, do you know what the world will think if the two of you are together? Zhu Yu's face was firm, the matter between me and her is our own matter. What does it have to do with the world? When he said this, his usually calm eyes flashed with a trace of arrogance. He had always had the right to be arrogant. Whether it was his age, his martial arts attainments, or his achievements, it was enough for him to look down on the martial arts world. It was just that everyone was used to their alliance master's calm and reserved appearance. At this moment, Mu Qingfeng suddenly saw the shadow of that woman in his eldest disciple. The demon sect's leader who had once defeated him. He was about the same age as his eldest disciple, but their personalities were as different as heaven and earth. When that woman held the sword in her hand, it was as if she had a domineering arrogance that could split the heaven and earth in half. She had a thunderous aura that could cut through everything. It was an aura and sharpness that people of his age had long since lost. Putting aside their standpoints, Mu Qingfeng actually admired Wu Yili very much. He felt that a martial artist should be like Wu Yili. She should have an aura that could cut through all obstacles and move forward courageously. Zhu Yu was actually affected by her? He could not help but ask, when did this happen? Zhu Yu was a little uncertain, this disciple does not know what happened before I lost my memories. But after I lost my memories, this disciple was already certain of my feelings when I first saw her. This life belongs to none other than you. Hearing this, Mu Qingfeng sighed. He understood his eldest disciple's character. Since he dared to say such words, it meant that he had really made up his mind. he still found it hard to believe. He thought for a moment and asked, what does the other party think? If a woman like the demonic sect master had no interest in her eldest disciple, Yu would probably fall into endless suffering for the rest of his life. Zhu Yu smiled when he heard this. Yi Li's heart is the same as mine. When he said this, he couldn't hide the smile on his face. Mu Qingfeng suddenly felt that he was really old. At this moment, Zhu Yu knelt down in front of Mu Qingfeng. Disciple knows that this is a little unfilial, but disciple will only recognize Yi Li in this life. Master, please grant me this wish. Mu Qingfeng looked at his kneeling posture and smiled helplessly. What kind of person do you think I am? Get up. Zhu Yu looked at his master and was pleasantly surprised. Master, you don't object? Mu Qingfeng glared at him. If I object, will you not be with her? Zhu Yu did not say anything. How is that possible? Even if everyone in the world opposed it, they would not be able to stop his determination to be with her. At this time, he heard Mu Qingfeng's faint voice. If you have time, bring her to see your master. Chapter 1365. Zhu Yu was overjoyed. He had already decided that he would be with Gu Xingyin no matter what others thought. However, the person in front of him was his master. If he could receive his master's blessings, the meaning would be different. He was overjoyed and quickly said, Disciple thanks master. Mu Qingfeng's emotions were still in a mess. He waved his hand at Zhu Yu and said, Hurry up and leave. Don't just stand here and annoy me. Zhu Yu smiled and tactfully stopped provoking him. He had already decided that once he regained his memories, he would officially go to the demon sect to propose marriage. He wanted to announce to the world that he, Zhu Yu, wanted to marry the demon sect leader, Wu Yeli. As for other people's objections? At most, he would not be the martial arts alliance master anymore. Compared to dealing with these complicated matters every day, Zhu Yu preferred to accompany Gu Xingyin. It was just the two of them. Whether it was traveling the world or finding a place to live in seclusion, it was good enough. Zhu Yu left Martial Arts Alliance on the same day and went to a small courtyard not far from Martial Arts Alliance. Gu Xingyin would be staying here for the time being. With her martial arts, it would not be difficult for her to sneak into Martial Arts Alliance. However, it would be rude to do so. Most importantly, Gu Xingyin only needed to know some information about her lover. There was no need for her to take such a risk. When Zhu Yu entered, Gu Xingyin was sitting on the swing in the courtyard and taking a nap. Although her eyes were closed, Zhu Yu knew that she was awake. She might have been asleep earlier, but she must have woken up the moment he entered the room. Before Gu Xingyin could open her eyes, she felt her body being carried by someone. Then, Zhu Yu carried her and spun her around in the courtyard. Even Gu Xingyin was taken aback by this inexplicable development. She quickly hugged Zhu Yu's waist and asked him what was wrong. After finally calming down, Zhu Yu carried Gu Xingyin and sat on the swing. I told my master about what happened between us, Zhu Yu said. His master? Mu Qingfeng's face flashed through Gu Xingyin's mind. And, this old man was probably one of the few people in Wu Yili's memory that was pleasing to the eye. She was strong, but she didn't put on the airs of a senior in the martial arts world. She didn't get angry after losing to a junior like him. Instead, she praised Wu Yili's talent in martial arts. She regained her senses and looked at Zhu Yu. Judging from his reaction, it seemed that the results were pretty good. Gu Xingyin asked with a smile, let me guess. Did your master promise us something? Zhu Yu was playing with her fingers. When he heard her, he smiled and said, you even know about this. Gu Xingyin snorted. Your mouth is so wide that it almost reaches your eyes. If your master was against it, would you be so happy? Zhu Yu laughed. He hugged Gu Xingyin's waist and brought their bodies closer together. He whispered in her ear, Yi Li, I'm really happy. Sensing the seriousness in his words, Gu Xingyin stopped teasing him. She turned and smiled at him. And, I'm also very happy. Cheng Mingyue sat in a small building with a gloomy expression. Ever since she heard the news that her father brought back, she had been in low spirits. Her senior brother had rejected her without any hesitation. "Miss, this is something that master found. It's said to be a rare item from the palace." The servant girl beside her handed over an item. Qing Mingyue looked at it disinterestedly. It was a pitch-black tube. What was it? Chapter 1366. What is this? She picked it up and looked at it for a while. She saw that there seemed to be something transparent at the end of the black tube. The servant girl smiled and said, "This servant has never seen such a rare item before. I only heard that this thing is called something like a clairvoyance. If you put it on your eyes, it is said that you can see very far away." Qing Mingyue sneered, "Such a magical thing?" Although she didn't believe it, she still picked it up and looked at it in front of her eyes. She was really surprised when she saw it. It really could see very far away. Although Qing Mingyue was from a prominent family, she had never seen such a rare item before. She took it and looked around. When the servant girl saw that her young miss finally smiled, she finally heaved a sigh of relief. She was responsible for taking care of young Mississippi. If young miss continued to be unhappy, she was afraid that old master would vent his anger on her servants. Qing Mingyue did not have the mood to care about the servant girl's thoughts. She felt that it was very novel. The scenery of those distant places magically appeared in front of her eyes. When she moved the thing away, only the scenery in front of her was left. She immediately forgot about the sadness that Zhu Yu had brought her and put all her attention on her new toy. But when her gaze suddenly landed on a place, the smile on her face froze. In that small courtyard, a man and woman were hugging each other and sitting on the swing. Why did they look so familiar? Qing Mingyue thought that she had seen wrongly. But when she looked at the two of them seriously, she felt as if a basin of cold water had been poured over her head. She was completely cold. That man in green who was smiling gently at the woman on top of him, wasn't that her senior brother Zhu Yu? No wonder he rejected her father's proposal. He actually liked someone else. Qing Mingyue only felt annoyed. She wanted to throw the thing in her hand away. Out of sight, out of mind. It was not that she was unwilling. How could she be willing if she did not look at that woman's face? The two of them were hugging each other and seemed to be having a very intimate conversation. From Qing Mingyue's point of view, the woman in white was facing her from the side, so she couldn't see the woman's face clearly. She only felt a sense of familiarity. Who was it? She actually snatched away her senior brother. Qing Mingyue's heart was burning with anger, but her face was cold. She wanted to take a good look and see who exactly that woman was. At this moment, Zhu Yu turned his head and kissed the girl's ear. The girl couldn't stand the ticklish feeling and smiled as she turned her head to avoid it. The woman's face happened to appear in Qing Mingyue's line of sight. Clang! Qing Mingyue was shocked. The thing in her hand loosened and fell to the ground. Aya! The maidservant who had been serving her quickly bent down to pick up the things. However, the main material of the clairvoyance, the transparent material called glass, was smashed into pieces by Qing Mingyue. Qing Mingyue wanted to take another look at it to confirm if she had seen wrongly, but she found that it had been completed and could no longer be used. She angrily threw the thing in her hand to the ground. When she came back to her senses, she saw the young servant girl looking at her nervously. She felt even more annoyed. He raised his hand and slapped her. "What are you looking at?" Scram! Chapter 1367. The maidservant packed up her things, covered her face, and retreated, leaving Qing Mingyue alone in the small building. She had seen it clearly just now. She wanted to confirm it again because she was unwilling to accept it. With that woman's appearance and grace, anyone who saw her once would never forget her. Qing Mingyue saw it clearly. The woman who was sitting in eldest senior brother's arms and smiling happily was the demon sex master, whom she had seen once. Why did that woman appear in Liangzhou City? But that was not important. The key was, her and eldest senior brother? Qing Mingyue could not understand why eldest senior brother would rather like a demoness from the demon sect than her, his junior sister who grew up with him and was of equal social status. Could it really be because of her devastatingly beautiful face? Thinking of the demon sex master's face, Qing Mingyue had to admit that she was no match for her, no matter how unwilling she was. Eldest senior brother must have been bewitched by that woman after he lost his memory. Qing Mingyue comforted herself. She could not let eldest senior brother continue to be deceived by that woman. Qing Mingyue sat by the window of the small building and looked in that direction stubbornly. It was as if she could still see the intimate appearance of the man and woman in the courtyard. Qing Mingyue's lips curled into a cold smile. Demon sex master, if we were at Mount Wudu, I would not have been able to do anything to you. But you insisted on seeking death and came to the martial arts world of the Central Plains alone to Liangzhou City. Then don't blame me for being impolite. She got up, hurriedly put on a cloak, and walked out. At the same time, in the small courtyard, Gu Xingyin felt that something was wrong. What's wrong? Zhu Yu sharply sensed her emotions. Gu Xingyin frowned. I felt that someone was watching us just now. Zhu Yu laughed. Don't think too much. With our abilities, there is no one in this world who can spy on us without being discovered, right? Gu Xingyin thought about it and agreed, so she did not think too much about it. Zhu Yu stayed there until lunchtime and then left. He was different now, so it was inevitable that someone would follow him. Being able to spend an entire morning here without being discovered was already the limit of what he could do. After Zhu Yu left, Gu Xingyin asked the system, what happened just now? Her prediction just now was definitely not an illusion. It was impossible for an expert of her level to have such a strong illusion. As expected, the system gave her the answer. It's her. After knowing who it was, Gu Xingyin was relieved. Let me guess. Given Fairy Ming Yu's righteous image, she will definitely be prepared to get rid of demons and defend justice after knowing that I, the cult master of the demon cult, have appeared in the headquarters of the Central Plains. Gu Xingyin rested his chin on his hand and thought for a moment. System, do you think she'll find a group of assassins to deal with me silently? Or will she leak my whereabouts and let the entire Central Plains martial arts world come to deal with me? The system's white light flashed, and it answered seriously, Host, according to the system's calculations, based on the character of the target, Qing Mingyu, it is more likely that she will directly take your life. Gu Xingyin smiled brightly. What a coincidence. I think so too. Her tone was relaxed, as if she did not feel that being targeted was a bad thing. Chapter 1368. Gu Xingyin lived in a small courtyard. Occasionally, she would disguise herself and walk around Liangzhou City. She had no choice. Her face was too eye-catching. If she didn't disguise herself, she would definitely be noticed. She was afraid that she would get into trouble. Gu Xingyin wasn't afraid of anyone, but she was afraid of trouble. Therefore, she would rather go out with a little trouble. On this day, she carried 2 jars of good wine and packed some of the most famous dishes in Liangzhou City. She planned to drink to her heart's content at night. When she entered the door, Gu Xingyin paused for a moment. She then closed the door of the small courtyard without changing her breathing, and slowly walked towards the only stone table in the courtyard. Just as she was about to put the things on the table, a black shadow quietly approached her from behind. The masked man's eyes flashed fiercely. The dagger in his hand mercilessly stabbed toward Gu Xingyin's back. This time, it was obvious that he wanted to kill her. However, if she was killed like this, Gu Xingyin's title as the leader of the demon sect would be in vain. The assassin did not even see the other party's movements clearly. He felt his hand go numb, and the dagger in his hand fell to the ground. Then, there was a bright light imprinted in his eyes. That was the last ray of light he saw in this world. Gu Xingyin didn't look at the assassin on the ground. Dead people were never worth her attention. 2 more gusts of wind came from behind. Gu Xingyin didn't seem to notice. She was stabbed. The eyes of the assassin on the right flashed with joy. When he thought of the generous reward from his employer, his heart surged. However, in the next moment, he felt that something was wrong. The dagger in his hand seemed to have stabbed into a thick steel wall. It didn't go in at all. By the time he wanted to retreat, it was already too late. A pair of hands had already silently grabbed his wrist. 2 more figures fell down. Gu Xingyin didn't plan to let him live at all. Most of the people in Jianghu who took money for their lives didn't know who their customers were. Even if they knew something, Gu Xingyin didn't care. That was no longer important. After all, Gu Xingyin already knew who the mastermind was. Naturally, there was no need for these people to exist. The small courtyard was completely silent. Only the smell of blood and the 3 corpses on the ground indicated that something had happened here. Gu Xingyin sneered in a low voice, "You only sent 3 of them to assassinate me? She really doesn't put the dignified demon cult's leader in her eyes, does she?" As soon as he finished speaking, Gu Xingyin sensed an aura moving in the middle of the courtyard. "Come out." She looked at her room indifferently. There was no movement. Gu Xingyin's voice grew colder. "What? Do you need me to personally invite you out?" The door creaked, and a black figure rushed out at an extremely fast speed. Looking at his clothes, it was obvious that he was the same group of people as the black-clothed assassins. Gu Xingyin glanced at him and knew that this person was the main force of this assassination. This person had the most profound internal strength among the 4 assassins. However, this person didn't have the intention to attack Gu Xingyin. Or it could be said that after knowing Gu Xingyin's identity, he didn't have the intention to go against her. Gu Xingyin looked at him with a smile. Suddenly, she had a wonderful idea. Chapter 1369. Gu Xingyin asked the black-clothed figure standing quietly by her side, "Do you want to live or die?" If someone else had said this, the black-clothed figure might have said that this person was arrogant. But the person who said this was the demon sect's master, who had challenged countless experts of the Central Plains with a single sword strike without losing a single one. The black-clothed figure could only admit that the other party had the ability to decide his life or death in an instant. Even though the assassin profession had always licked blood from the edge of the blade, there was no one who didn't cherish their own life. Gu Xingyin was very satisfied to hear the expected answer. "I want to live." This was the good thing about assassins. They wouldn't talk nonsense with you. They would only tell you what they wanted in the most straightforward way. "Very good," Gu Xingyin said. "Then use your own life to make a deal with this venerable one." Her lips moved, and the black-clothed figure's body trembled. In the end, he could only hoarsely agree. Gu Xingyin waved her hand, indicating that he could leave. Just as the black-clothed figure was about to leave, he heard Gu Xingyin shout, "Wait a moment." His body stiffened, afraid that this person would change her mind again. He heard Gu Xingyin say, "Remember to take them away. Don't dirty this venerable one's place." The black-clothed figure hurriedly agreed as if he had been pardoned. The small courtyard fell silent once more. Gu Xingyin turned her head to look at the small courtyard. Although it looked very clean, when she thought about how 3 people had died here not long ago, she instantly lost the mood to eat and drink. For people like her, everything she did depended on her mood. Gu Xingyin expressed that her impression of Qing Mingyue had worsened, because Qing Mingyue had ruined her mood for drinking. The system silently lit a candle for a certain character target. The next day, Gu Xingyin, who was drinking in a tea house, heard a rumor. "Hey, did you know? Fairy Mingyue encountered an assassin last night." Fairy Mingyue? Who would hate Fairy Mingyue so much? Who knows, the conversation in the tea house was in full swing. Gu Xingyin listened quietly. The gist of the news was that a group of people had infiltrated the Qing family last night, preparing to assassinate the Qing family's eldest daughter, Qing Mingyue. Fortunately, Old Master Cheng had arrived in time. In the end, although the assassin was forced to retreat, Old Master Cheng's old illness was triggered, and the heat poison in his body could no longer be suppressed. Gu Xingyin hid the smile at the corner of his mouth. Heat poison? The only antidote he knew was the frigid pond snow lotus. As for the cold pond snow lotus, it had already been fed to the Wulin Alliance chief Zhu Yu by the devil cult's cult master. In other words, there was no cure for Old Master Chengjin this time. "Shopkeeper, the bill please." Gu Xingyin shouted and placed an ingot of silver on the table. All right. Gu Xingyin slowly walked out. Qing Mingyue, this time, your father had saved you from disaster. What about the next time? Gu Xingyin did not feel guilty for involving Qingzhen. Qingzhen was not a good person either. He had done those things in the dark for the Qing family's benefit, and he had even caused the downfall of those small families. Even if he died, he deserved it. When Gu Xingyin returned to the small courtyard, she saw Zhu Yu sitting there. There was a cup of tea beside his hand, but it was no longer warm. It was obvious that he had been here for quite some time. When he saw Gu Xingyin, his expression became serious. Chapter 1370. Gu Xingyin closed the door behind him, removed the disguise on his face, and sat beside him. What happened to you? She asked. Zhu Yu looked at Gu Xingyin and felt his throat dry up. Do you know what happened to the Qing family? Gu Xingyin's expression turned serious when he heard that. She looked at Zhu Yu and wondered why he was here. Was he here to question her? Or did he have other intentions? She thought for a while and decided not to use all sorts of bad conjectures on her lover. She nodded. I know. Moreover, I was the one who sent the assassins to the Qing family. After saying that, she looked at Zhu Yu. She wanted to know how Zhu Yu would react at a time like this. When Zhu Yu heard Gu Xingyin's words, the first thing he said was, Did my junior sister do something wrong? Gu Xingyin finally smiled. When he heard that she sent the assassins to kill, his first reaction was not to suspect her, but to question others. What was she thinking about when she met such a man? She said, Yesterday during the day, a group of killers came to my small courtyard. I left 3 people alive and 1 alive. Looking at Zhu Yu's worried expression, Gu Xingyin comforted him. I'm fine. Then she said, As for the remaining one, I told him to use his life in exchange for the life of the person who wants to take my life. She spread out her hands innocently. I didn't know that this person would be your junior sister, Fairy Mingyu. When she called Fairy Mingyu, her voice was full of mockery. The moon was bright and clear in the sky, cold and pure. How could she be worthy of this name? Zhu Yu's serious expression finally relaxed. He lifted his hand and felt Gu Xingyin's pulse. This man was probably the only one in the world who could make the leader of the demon cult obediently let his pulse be held and not resist. Zhu Yu only felt relieved after he personally checked that this person was fine. After hearing about the Qing family, Zhu Yu did not know why, but the first thing she thought of was Gu Xingyin. He didn't know why he was so sure that this matter had something to do with Gu Xingyin. However, he wasn't suspecting her. Instead, he was wondering how his junior sister had offended her. Based on her understanding of Gu Xingyin, she was not the kind of person who would kill for no reason. That was why he asked that question when he came here. Gu Xingyin looked at him and suddenly said, Zhu Yu, on your account, I will not pursue this matter with her this time. If there is a next time. Her eyes flashed with killing intent. Then, she felt her hand being held by a pair of warm hands. You don't have to do it on my account, Yili. Zhu Yu looked at her seriously. No one is more important than you. Junior sister Cheng's actions shouldn't be forgiven. You can't forgive me, and neither can I. He couldn't forgive anyone who intended to harm this person in front of him. Something seemed to flash in Gu Xingyin's eyes. She smiled and said, I'll take your words seriously. Don't think that after you regain your memory, you'll be reminded of your relationship with your childhood sweetheart and you won't be able to bear to part with it. Zhu Yu smiled and shook his head. I won't. If there is anything more important to me than you in this world, I won't forget it. There won't be such a situation. Chapter 1371. Bang! Qing Mingyue didn't know how many tea sets had been broken in her room. Her personal maid stood outside the room with her shoulders shrunk. She didn't dare to provoke her mistress at this moment. Since the master was assassinated and the doctor said there was nothing he could do, her mistress became very moody. Qing Mingyue was very nervous now. She knew who those assassins were after. Their target was her. Her father, on the other hand, had used his true qi for her sake, which had triggered his old injury. Those assassins, Qing Mingyue still felt scared when she thought about it. That cold and emotionless gaze, that chilling dagger, was just a hair's breadth away from piercing into her heart. Her martial arts skills, which she was proud of, were simply vulnerable in front of them. Those assassins were after revenge. Because before they killed her, they said, "Miss Qing, why didn't you tell us the identity of the other party when you hired us?" That assassin was really angry in his heart. Even if they were assassins, their lives were valuable. Assassinating the hierarch of the devil cult was a suicide mission. If Qing Mingyue had told them Gu Xingyin's identity at that time, they wouldn't have taken the job anyway. Not to mention that it was impossible to complete the mission, they would have offended a big shot for no reason. This woman didn't care about their lives at all. This was the most important reason why Qing Mingyue didn't dare to tell them Gu Xingyin's identity at this moment. If they knew that the target was the hierarch of the devil cult, no assassin organization would dare to take the job no matter how much money she offered. But now, Qing Mingyue was not afraid of these assassins, but of the hierarch of the devil cult. Did she know about it now? Qing Mingyue couldn't help but shudder when she recalled the way that woman had looked at her from above and the mysterious means she had used to deal with her. That woman was definitely not a person who repaid evil with good. If she knew that she had hired someone to assassinate her, she would never let her go. But now? Her father, the only one who could protect her in the Qing family, was lying in bed in a coma. If that woman came to make trouble for her, the Qing family alone couldn't stop her. Qing Mingyue bit her lips so hard that it bled. Her expression was indescribably gloomy. Master of the devil cult, every man for himself. Since you and I are already mortal enemies, don't blame me for being ruthless. She tidied herself up, and when she went out again, she looked no different from before. When the servant girl at the door saw that Miss had returned to normal, she heaved a sigh of relief. "Xiao Tang, clean up this place and accompany me on a trip." Yes, Mississippi, a female guest, who was shrouded in a curtain, arrived at the largest intelligence building in Liangzhou City. The receptionist wasn't surprised to see this. People who came here usually didn't have any honorable intentions. And these people were usually unwilling to let others know their identities. However, they did not know that if the information pavilion wanted to know their identities, it would not take much effort. When the mysterious guest saw the receptionist, he immediately took out a money bag. The receptionist at the information pavilion noticed that this guest had a pair of very beautiful hands. "I need you to help me spread a message about the things inside." She opened the money pouch in her hand and poured out the contents, a whole pouch of money. Gold. Chapter 1372. The eyes of the person in charge of the information pavilion narrowed when he saw so much gold. Even for him, it was rare to see such a large sum of money. However, he didn't reach out to take it. Instead, he asked, "What do you want us to do, miss?" In their line of work, the biggest taboo was to be short-sighted. When they saw money, they didn't care about anything else. Some gold and silver, even if you got it, you still had to be alive to spend it. Qing Mingyue was a little nervous. She was afraid that the other party would be like those assassin organizations and not take the job. However, she had no other choice. In the end, she opened her mouth and told him what she wanted to do. The person in charge of the information pavilion opened his mouth and looked at the person in front of him who was wrapped tightly. Who was this person? How dare he provoke the demon sex leader? No, the point was, the demon sex leader was in Liangzhou City. He thought for a while and asked Qing Mingyue to sit here and wait for a while. He also prepared tea and snacks. "Honorable guest, please wait for a moment. I can't make the decision. Let our pavilion master talk to you in detail." Qing Mingyue nodded. Soon, a handsome young man in white holding a folding fan walked over under the guidance of the person in charge. He had a handsome face and the corners of his lips were slightly raised. His appearance was not inferior to that of eldest senior brother Zhu Yu. She had never heard of such a person before. Qing Mingyue glanced at the man. She wasn't a little girl who just came out of the martial arts world. Naturally, she knew that this was not his true appearance. The person in charge left after bringing the man here. "Miss, do you want to touch that person? The man in white smiled and pointed to the west. The headquarters of the demon sect, Mount Wudu, was in that direction. Qing Mingyue was a little nervous, but her tone was cold and arrogant. Why? Is there a problem? No, there's no problem. The man in white didn't seem to think that the demon sect that everyone in Jianghu feared was very powerful. This made Qing Mingyue's heart calm down. She said, then our deal is done. With a snap, the man in white closed his fan. He stared at Qing Mingyue, his gaze seemingly able to pierce through the layer of cloth and see through her entire person. Esteemed guest, this price is not worth the risk of offending the demonic sect. The man in white was still smiling. Qing Mingyue gritted her teeth. Then how much will it take for you to do it? The man in white stretched out 2 fingers with a smile. Qing Mingyue looked at him in confusion. She didn't understand what he meant. Seeing this, the man in white said, double. He pointed at the gold ingots scattered on the table. His meaning was self-evident. Qing Mingyue's voice sharpened. Twice? You guys are crazy. I just want you to spread the news. The man in white didn't get angry when he saw her like this. He only said a few words lightly. But this news is related to the cult master of the demonic sect who defeated all the top-notch masters of the martial arts world of the Central Plains. This humble one can guarantee that apart from this humble one, there is no other clan that would dare to accept the mission of our esteemed guest. Qing Mingyue's momentum suddenly weakened. She knew that he was telling the truth. Can't be less. She was a little unwilling to give up. Such a large sum of money was not easy for her. The man in white shook his head. Not a penny less. Chapter 1373. In the end, Qing Mingyue paid the money. After she was done with this matter, she returned to the Qing mansion with satisfaction. In her plan, the entire Liangzhou city would know that the demon sect leader, Wu Yeli, had come to Liangzhou city and that she was up to no good. Needless to say, rumors could easily spread to her desired effect. Qing Mingyue knew this very well. She only needed to reveal the demon sect leader's address tomorrow or the day after. By then, if a few more accidents happened, countless people in the martial arts world would go against the demon sect leader in the name of eliminating the evil. Qing Mingyue was very familiar with such methods. However, she did not know that not long after she left the information pavilion, an inconspicuous figure entered the martial union. Zhu Yu looked at the secret letter in his hand with a gloomy expression. He didn't remember what happened before, but his previous subordinates didn't know about it, so they reported important things to him as usual. He said in a low voice, "Find out the identity of the person who entrusted the mission." The subordinate was shocked. "Chief, this is against the rules." His unfinished words were silenced under Zhu Yu's cold gaze. "Yes, sir." The result was out very quickly. It was his good junior sister, Qing Mingyue. Zhu Yu looked at the report and did not speak for a long time. He always knew that his junior sister was a narrow-minded person, but he did not expect her to be so vicious. Zhu Yu went directly to the small courtyard where Gu Xingyin was. He showed her the information he had found. Unexpectedly, Zhu Yu did not see any surprise in Gu Xingyin's eyes. "You know about this?" he asked doubtfully. Gu Xingyin shook her head. "I only know that your junior sister has never had any good intentions towards me." She looked at Zhu Yu. "You told me this just like that. Aren't you afraid that I will take revenge on your junior sister?" Zhu Yu looked at her. "I have said this a long time ago. To me, there is nothing more important than you in this world." Even if Gu Xingyin did not pursue the matter with Qing Mingyue, he did not intend to let it go so easily. Gu Xingyin smiled when he heard that. "All right then, I'll tell you in advance. Don't blame me if I do anything." Zhu Yu only looked at her with a smile. He had placed his entire heart on her, so naturally, no one understood her better than he did. His Yili had never been a malicious person. No matter what happened to Qing Mingyue, she only had herself to blame. In the end, Gu Xingyin said a few words to Zhu Yu. She wanted to deal with Qing Mingyue's matter by herself. Zhu Yu was not surprised that she would make such a decision. The demon cult master, Wu Yeli, had never been a woman who only knew how to hide behind others. On the second day, as expected, some news secretly spread throughout Liangzhou city. It was said that the evil cult intended to harm the world of martial artists in the Central Plains, and that their cult master had secretly come to Liangzhou city. While everyone was shocked by the news, another address was spread. It was said to be the place where the demon cult master lived. When Qing Mingyue heard the news, she smiled slowly. Wu Yeli, no matter how powerful you are, can you go against the entire world of martial artists in the Central Plains? Chapter 1374. However, when the group of martial artists from the Central Plains finally arrived at the small courtyard that Gu Xingyin had bought after choosing a day to annihilate the evil path, Gu Xingyin was stunned. They saw Zhu Yu, the leader of the martial arts world, chatting with his master and several other martial arts seniors. Zhu Yu was obviously in a very good mood. When he saw the group of people, he held a wine cup in his hand and smiled. What's wrong with everyone? The group of people from the martial arts world were speechless. Seeing the scene in front of them, they were almost certain that they had been fooled. Where was the lair of the devil sex leader? They didn't see the devil sex leader, but the leader of the martial arts world was here. The leader of this group of people from the martial arts world was the leader of a medium-sized sect. He had quite a bit of prestige among this group of people. At this time, he looked embarrassed, but he was also free and easy. This old man heard a rumor that there was an evildoer from the devil's sect hiding here, so I brought my martial arts friends here. Now that I see the leader and the other seniors, I know that I have been fooled. With the leader and the other seniors here, which blind person from the devil's sect would dare to come here? His words were beautiful. Not only did he explain the reason for doing so, but he also secretly praised everyone present. Sure enough, after hearing his words, the faces of the seniors who were unhappy because their mood had been disturbed became much better. Mu Qingfeng looked at the group of people from the martial arts world and said, "Today I am in a good mood, so I invited a few old friends to this courtyard that I bought a long time ago for a small gathering." Who would have thought that there would be such a thing? That person felt cold sweat on his back. All the people here were old seniors who had been famous in the martial arts world for a long time. During their time, he didn't even know what a sword was. He just said that he was going to exterminate the remnants of the devil sect. If these people were the remnants of the devil sect, the martial arts world of the Central Plains would have changed a long time ago. Under the gaze of the older generation of martial arts experts, this group of people hurriedly retreated. Who spread this news? After leaving the courtyard, the leader finally couldn't hold back and scolded. Everyone present looked at each other and didn't say anything. When the sect master saw this scene, he felt a chill in his heart. They were clearly being used by someone with ulterior motives. He said in a low voice, "What happened to the person who said he saw the devil sex demoness appear in the courtyard?" If it wasn't for the fact that someone had sworn that he had personally seen people from the devil sect entering and exiting the courtyard, he wouldn't have been so rash as to barge in. Naturally, it was impossible for anyone to stand up for such a matter. The sect leader probably knew that if he really wanted to make use of them, they would have run away long ago. Even if they didn't run away, they wouldn't be so stupid as to stand up and admit that they were spreading fake news. "Everyone, disperse," he said with a heavy expression. Therefore, in less than 2 days, the news about the demon sex leader was covered by another joke. This joke was about a group of people in the martial arts world who had heard a rumor from who knew where. They had gathered together to eliminate evil and defend the Tao. In the end, they had bumped into Senior Mu Qingfeng's courtyard door. Who was Senior Mu Qingfeng? Who were the people in his courtyard? However, the old senior was kind and did not make things difficult for these people. In the end, these people returned with their tails between their legs. However, no one knew which busybody actually made a list of these people. They had lost a lot of face this time. Under such circumstances, the group of people gnashed their teeth in hatred towards the culprit who had caused them to become like this, the person who could spread the rumors. Chapter 1375. Ha 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 ha. When she heard this, Gu Xingyin was laughing happily in the courtyard. "You're worse than me." Gu Xingyin looked at Zhu Yu with a smile. Zhu Yu only smiled without saying anything. Tell me, when did you regain your memory? Gu Xingyin suddenly asked. Zhu Yu was shocked. How did you know? Gu Xingyin looked at him. Why wouldn't I know? Although Zhu Yu had concealed it well, there were still some differences between this person and his previous appearance. Zhu Yu shook his head. 2 days ago, I was going to give you a surprise. Gu Xingyin pursed her lips and smiled. Then, wouldn't I be letting you down? Zhu Yu looked at her. No, I'm very happy. Even his master couldn't tell that he had regained his memory, but she could. How could he not be happy? Since you already know that I've regained my memory, why don't you come with me to see my master? Zhu Yu suddenly said. Gu Xingyin had no objection to this. Zhu Yu's master, Senior Mu Qingfeng, had already found out from Zhu Yu that she had been in Liangzhou City all this time. This time, it was all thanks to Mu Qingfeng's cooperation that the people in the martial arts world were able to get rid of their objections so quickly. When Mu Qingfeng saw the demon sect's leader again, he had mixed feelings. This was the 3rd time he met Wu Yeli. The first time they met, her talent in martial arts left a deep impression on him. The second time they met, the eccentric personality of the demon sect's leader made him grit his teeth. And the 3rd time they met, Mu Qingfeng could only sigh as he looked at the woman who bowed respectfully to him. He knew very well how arrogant she was. But now, she was willing to come to the martial arts world of the Central Plains alone for his disciple. She even bowed to him. The slight grudge in his heart disappeared just like that. Forget it, he would let the young people make their own decisions. Since Zhu Yu had made his own choice, as his master, he would follow his own wishes. Zhu Yu suddenly looked at his master. Master, I have another piece of good news to tell you. Mu Qingfeng looked at his disciple. Zhu Yu told Mu Qingfeng that she had regained her memories. Sure enough, this news was undoubtedly the happiest news for Mu Qingfeng right now. Moreover, it had lifted a heavy burden from his heart. It also made him understand that there was no room for negotiation between his disciple and the cult master of the devil cult. Zhu Yu had always been gentle and reserved since he was young. However, as his master, Zhu Yu knew that his disciple would not make a decision easily. Once he had made up his mind, he would not change it. How is it now? Can you confirm my sincerity? Zhu Yu held Gu Xingyin's hand and asked with a smile. Gu Xingyin glanced at him. When had she ever doubted his sincerity? Does your master know about your junior sister? Gu Xingyin asked. Zhu Yu nodded. Although I didn't say it explicitly, my master has already found out. He looked at Gu Xingyin and seemed to be a little embarrassed. My master means that she is a girl after all. Now that her father's life is unknown, if possible, it is better to leave her some leeway. Gu Xingyin held the golden silk cup in her hand. Her slender fingers rested on it quietly. I will give her a chance. It is none of my business whether she can hold on to it or not. Chapter 1376. When Qing Mingyue heard the news from outside, she couldn't help but sweep all the things on her dowry onto the floor. Her eyes were faintly bloodshot. Obviously, she hadn't rested well for a few days. However, the reason for her lack of rest was very different from before. 2 days ago, it was because of excitement. In her mind, she had already imagined dozens of possible outcomes for the cult master of the devil cult. He might have to flee with injuries, or he might have to bear the infamy of being condemned by the public. Of course, Qing Mingyue hoped that the woman would not be able to go back. Only when that woman was dead, would she be able to truly rest assured. However, in the short span of a day, this matter had taken a turn that she did not expect. There was no demon sect leader at all. The person living in the courtyard was her master, the martial arts senior Mu Qingfeng. When Qing Mingyue heard this, her heart turned cold. She didn't expect that her master would side with the demon sect leader. That's right, in Qing Mingyue's eyes, there was no other possibility. It was as if a string in her mind that had been stretched taut for a long time had suddenly snapped. At this moment, there was nothing but hatred in her mind. That woman was simply a devil. Since she appeared, senior brother ignored her. Now, even master was siding with her. What about her? Her father was now lying in bed, unconscious. Her reputation as Fairy Mingyue in the martial arts world had also begun to decline. It was all because of that woman. No, it wasn't just that woman. There was also senior brother Zhu Yu whom she liked, master who had always doted on her, and those people in the martial arts world. These people were all hypocrites. Unconsciously, her eyes became redder and redder. At this moment, a golden glimmer floated in from outside the window. The glimmer was very weak. It was so weak that if one didn't look carefully, one wouldn't notice it at all. That golden glimmer landed on Qing Mingyue's hair without anyone noticing. Then, it disappeared in an instant. Qing Mingyue frowned slightly. Somehow, she felt that her heart had palpitated a little just now. The next moment, a maid's cries could be heard, "Young miss! Young miss, old master has passed away." What? Qing Mingyue was in a daze for a moment. Ever since she was born, her mother had passed away, and it was her father who had raised her. Because she didn't like it and he was afraid that she would be wronged, Qingzhen didn't even take a second wife. Even though Gu Xingyin didn't approve of Qingzhen's character, he had to admit that Qingzhen was the best a father could do for his daughter. But at the same time, it was precisely because of his unprincipled doting that Qing Mingyue developed such a domineering and selfish character. Qingzhen was a famous senior in the martial arts world. Almost all the reputable figures in the martial arts world had come to his funeral. Regardless of whether they were sincere or not, at this moment, everyone had to put on a sorrowful expression. For 3 days, Qing Mingyue knelt in front of her father's memorial tablet. No matter how others comforted her, it was useless. It wasn't until 3 days later that Mu Qingfeng couldn't stand it anymore. If he went down, he was afraid that his little disciple would fall before Qingzhen was even buried. He walked to Qing Mingyue's side and reached out to help her. "Go away. Don't touch me," Qing Mingyue suddenly exclaimed. Chapter 1377. Not only Mu Qingfeng, but the other guests were also shocked by Qing Mingyue's sudden emotional outburst. Zhu Yu stood in the crowd and frowned as he looked at Qing Mingyue. Gu Xingyin didn't come. In her words, she said, "Qingzhen, that old man, how can I attend his funeral?" Mu Qingfeng lowered his head and looked at his little disciple. He wasn't angry at her rudeness. He could understand that she had lost her father. It was normal for her to be emotional. But Qing Mingyue's next words shocked him. After Qing Mingyue said those words, it was as if she finally had a breakthrough after many days of emotions. She didn't ask anyone to help her and stood up on her own. Because she hadn't stood up for a few days, her body was a little shaky, but there was a strange smile on her face. She looked at Mu Qingfeng and said, "Don't help me. I know that you accepted me as your disciple because of my Qing family's status in the martial arts world." Mu Qingfeng, you hypocrite. As soon as her words came out, the whole hall was in an uproar. Could it be that Mingyu's father's sudden death had caused her to go crazy? When Mu Qingfeng heard such words, his expression calmed down. It was as if his little disciple wasn't talking about him. He opened his mouth and said, "In your heart, has this always been how you see me as your master?" Qing Mingyue stared at him closely. "Yes. Mu Qingfeng, if it weren't for your former identity as the #1 master in the martial arts world, my status would rise to a higher level if I became your disciple. Do you think I care?" Mu Qingfeng lowered his eyes and suddenly turned around. "Then today, in front of all the martial arts world, this old man will announce that Miss Cheng and I have dissolved our master-disciple relationship. This old man can no longer be Miss Cheng's master." It was hard to tell if he was happy or angry, but everyone felt that Senior Mu Qingfeng was furious this time. The disciple that he raised with his own hands actually said such disgraceful words. Many people felt that if their own disciple was like this, they said that being kicked out of the sect was a light punishment. If her temper was more violent, it was possible that she would be cleaned up. It was just that Mingyu usually looked gentle and generous. No one would have thought that her heart would have such thoughts. There was a lot of discussion in the hall. When these discussions reached Qing Mingyue's ears, it became everyone mocking her. Mu Qingfeng had already left. When Zhu Yu saw this scene, his face darkened. Since Miss Cheng is no longer a disciple of my sect, Zhu Yu will take his leave. He lifted his leg and was about to leave. His master was probably sad now, and he was a little worried. Zhu Yu, stop right there. Qing Mingyue suddenly shouted when she saw him. Zhu Yu turned around and saw Qing Mingyue looking at him with a complicated expression. Deep love and extreme hatred could be seen in her eyes. Zhu Yu, tell me, which part of me, Qing Mingyue, is not worthy of you? I like you so much and I'm always worried about you. Why won't you look at me? She was very agitated. Zhu Yu said faintly, Miss Cheng, the relationship between a man and a woman cannot be forced. It's better not to say such words so as to avoid damaging your reputation. Qing Mingyue sneered. Reputation? She stared at Zhu Yu. I know. Is it because I'm not beautiful enough? I can't compare to that which Wu Yili, so you don't like me. When Zhu Yu saw that she actually dragged Gu Xingyin into it, his expression turned ugly. Chapter 1378. As for the other people in the martial arts world, those who knew who Wu Yili was pricked up their ears to listen. This even involved the demon sect's leader. Zhu Yu stared coldly at Qing Mingyue. Miss Cheng, Zhu Yu has grown up with you and has always treated you like a younger sister. I have never had any thoughts of overstepping my boundaries. This has nothing to do with anyone. Never had any thoughts of overstepping his boundaries. When these words reached Qing Mingyue's ears, it meant that Zhu Yu had never liked her. She didn't believe it and screamed, I don't believe it. It must be that bitch Wu Yili who bewitched you. You men are all like this. Whenever you see a pretty girl, your soul will fly away. When she said this, many people's faces darkened. Qing Mingyue's words had scolded everyone. Qing Mingyue didn't know why, but she knew that once she said these words, her reputation in the martial arts world would be ruined. But she couldn't help it. As long as she saw the hypocritical and disgusting faces of those people, she couldn't help but want to vent all the violence and resentment in her heart. What's wrong with what I said? You men, all I have to do is smile and wave at him, and he'll crawl on me like a dog. He'll bite whoever I ask him to. Qing Mingyue seemed to have thought of something and started giggling. At this moment, a young swordsman with a sword stood out from the crowd. He looked at Qing Mingyue with undisguised disgust. I was once one of Fairy Mingyue's admirers. Thank you, Fairy Mingyue, for clearing my doubts today so that I will no longer be a dog in the future. After he finished speaking, he cupped his hands towards the people around him and turned to leave. After this person left, the other young people left one after another. They had all heard that Senior Cheng had passed away and were worried that Fairy Mingyue would be too sad, so they specially came here. But they didn't expect to hear such words. These young people were all hot-blooded men. How could they tolerate such a thing? Zhu Yu looked at the crazy Qing Mingyue and sighed. He didn't care about Qing Mingyue's shouts and turned to leave. As Qing Mingyue watched the martial artists in the morning hall leave one by one, she felt incredibly happy. See, these were the hypocrites. Now that she had hit the nail on the head, one by one, none of them had the face to stay, right? She slowly leaned against her father's coffin and sat down. No one knew what she was thinking. He sat there until the middle of the night. Qing Mingyue slowly raised her head. She remembered the events of the day. What had she done? Qing Mingyue could not hide the fear on her face. Her words during the day might have offended most of the people in the Chinese world of martial artists, and she was even chased out of her sect. No, how could he do such a stupid thing? Qing Mingyue knew very well that she wasn't wronged when she said those words, because those were her truest thoughts. But she would never tell anyone about those flowers. She must have been set up. That person was so vicious that he actually wanted her to lose her footing in the martial arts world of the Central Plains. No. She couldn't do this. She was the high and mighty Fairy Mingyue. How could she be defeated so easily? Chapter 1379. It was currently the wee hours of the morning. Qing Mingyue's mind raced. She had to think of a way to redeem herself. Once she redeemed her reputation, she would slowly settle the score with that little bitch. After thinking for a moment, she stood up and took a bronze mirror. Looking at the woman in the mirror with messy hair and bloodshot eyes, Qing Mingyue's eyes flashed with disgust. This was not her. Qing Mingyue carefully fetched some water and washed herself. She then changed into a set of plain-colored clothes and did not apply any makeup. Her pale complexion and dark circles were extremely obvious due to not having rested for several days. Looking at the delicate and pitiful woman in the mirror, Qing Mingyue nodded her head in satisfaction. Only by looking like this would she be able to arouse the sympathy of others. Under the night sky, Qing Mingyue knelt in front of Martial Union's main entrance. Zhu Yu had just woken up in the morning when he heard his subordinates report that Qing Mingyue was kneeling in front of Martial Union's main entrance. She seemed to have come to ask for forgiveness. Ask for forgiveness? A cold glint flashed through Zhu Yu's eyes. After saying such words, would a simple sentence of asking for forgiveness be enough? Zhu Yu did not pay any attention to Qing Mingyue. Instead, he turned around and went to see his master. Mu Qingfeng's complexion was still ugly. Anyone who knew that they had raised an ingrate would not be in a good mood. When Zhu Yu entered, he just happened to hear his master's angry rebuke, "Ask for forgiveness? Tell her to scram. This old man cannot accept her bow." Zhu Yu sighed. It seemed that his master already knew that Qing Mingyue was outside. He lifted his leg and walked in. "Master, please calm down." When Mu Qingfeng saw Zhu Yu, his complexion became slightly better. However, his anger was still visible. "You've come." Mu Qingfeng looked at Zhu Yu. "You're not here to plead on behalf of that cruel and unscrupulous thing, right?" Zhu Yu shook his head. "Master, you've underestimated me." "Am I, Zhu Yu, a person who cannot differentiate between right and wrong?" Mu Qingfeng nodded. "She said those words last night. Did she think that today's act would be enough to make up for what she said? Just as she said, she thinks that everyone in Jianghu is a fool." Speaking of this, Mu Qingfeng's anger rose again. Zhu Yu once again comforted his master. Qing Mingyue knelt in front of Martial Union's main entrance. At this time, the sky was already bright, and the number of people outside gradually increased. Seeing such a beautiful woman in plain clothes kneeling here, it was natural for people to start discussing. Upon receiving the orders from above, Martial Union's guards completely ignored Qing Mingyue. Seeing that no one was paying attention to her, Qing Mingyue did not panic. She knew very well that in this situation, the weaker she appeared, the more others would sympathize with her. At a time like this, what he needed the most was the sympathy of others. Not long after, there would naturally be people who would have tender feelings for the fairer sex, who would seek justice for her. At that time, as long as he pretended to be sad and remorseful, there would always be people who would believe him. Qing Mingyue already knew the temperament of these people like the back of her hand. However, no matter how much she calculated, she did not realize how serious the words she said last night were. The men in the martial arts world were indeed protective of the fairer sex. They were also very tolerant towards beauties. However, this did not mean that they were willing to become dogs. Those people were actually looking at the number one beauty in the martial arts world with mocking eyes. They were all wondering what kind of show she was going to put on this time. It was already 2 hours before daybreak. However, there was still no one who came out to speak for Qing Mingyue. At this time, Qing Mingyue started to panic. Things seemed to have gone beyond her expectations. Chapter 1380. This was completely different from what she had imagined. In her mind, with such a great beauty like her kneeling here, not to mention 2 hours, even if it took less than an hour, there should be people who couldn't help but come forward to ask about it. She knelt there, feeling a little apprehensive. However, her face still maintained that delicate and pitiful appearance. She refused to believe that she, Qing Mingyue's charm, was so weak. However, Qing Mingyue did not notice the ridicule in the eyes of the onlookers as they looked at her. What they were discussing was not the reason for such a great beauty to kneel here, but the shocking words she had said last night. Even if there were 1 or 2 people who did not know the truth and could not bear to look at her, they were pulled away by the people beside them and informed of the matter. After a round of information, the people who originally wanted to save the beauty started looking at Qing Mingyue with strange expressions. Such a delicate and pitiful beauty actually said such unorthodox and disrespectful words. Indeed, one could not judge a book by its cover. In the martial arts world, seniority was the most important thing. The status of a master and disciple was also extremely important. The words that Qing Mingyue had said to her master, Mu Qingfeng, yesterday were truly chilling. Another hour passed, and Qing Mingyue's legs were already numb. Finally, a person appeared at the entrance of Martial Union. It was not her master, nor was it her senior brother. However, Qing Mingyue recognized that this person was her senior brother's capable assistant. Since he had appeared, did that mean that her senior brother had not completely abandoned her? Qing Mingyue's eyes suddenly lit up. However, in the next moment, the words that came out of that person's mouth caused Qing Mingyue's heart to turn cold. Miss Cheng, you are kneeling in front of my Martial Union's entrance so early in the morning. This is not good for my Martial Union's reputation. Please return, that person said coldly with a monotonous tone. In reality, the fact that he did not directly scold her was already an act of self-restraint. Song Ren had been by Zhu Yu's side for many years. Naturally, he also harbored some unclear thoughts towards this beautiful junior sister of his master. However, he had always known his own identity. He knew that Qing Mingyue's status was not something he could covet. Hence, he had always bitterly restrained his thoughts. Who would have thought that they, the people who admired Qing Mingyue, were actually dogs in her heart? Moreover, they had all seen how much Senior Mu Qingfeng cared about this young disciple of his. But, in the eyes of this person, it had become a profitable thing to do. He, Song Ren, must be blind to fall for such a heartless and unscrupulous woman. Thus, under such circumstances, he could only maintain his politeness on the surface, and that was already the most he could do. However, this was not the result Qing Mingyue wanted at all. She raised her head and her eyes were filled with tears. She bit the corner of her lips and looked very sad. Brother, my master, he really won't forgive me? Her swaying posture made it seem as if she would fall if the other party gave her a negative answer. If it was the Song Ren of the past, his heart would ache to see such an attitude. But now, he just watched coldly as Qing Mingyue put on an act. She even called him Big Brother. He had been by his master's side for so many years. As long as this Miss Cheng had the heart, it was impossible for her to not know his name. He had really been blinded in the past. He actually did not see through this point. Chapter 1381. He stood at the entrance of Martial Union and coldly said, Senior Mu has already said that Miss Cheng is no longer his disciple. Miss Cheng, don't call him master anymore. Qing Mingyue's heart turned cold. She knew that sometimes, the attitude of the person serving beside you was an indication of the master's attitude. Looking at this person's appearance, her master and senior brother were really not going to give her any face? Qing Mingyue only felt a chill in her heart. In any case, they had been master and disciple for more than 10 years. Yet, at this time, they could actually bear to see her like this. Qing Mingyue had never thought about what kind of relationship she had talked about when she pointed at Mu Qingfeng and said those words last night. Thus, it could be said that the selfish people in this world all had the same characteristic. They would always remember the bad things of others, but could not see the good things of others and their own bad things. No matter what kind of thoughts she had in her heart, Qing Mingyue still put on a pale face on the surface. She gritted her teeth and said, since master and senior brother are not willing to forgive Mingyue, and Mingyue has already lost her father. Now that I'm going to lose my master and senior brother, what's the point of living in this world? As she spoke, she acted as if she was going to crash into a stone pillar at the side. Stop, Miss Cheng. Song Ren still had that cold look on his face. He looked at Qing Mingyue, his gaze devoid of any warmth. If Miss Cheng wants to die, please find another place. If you kill yourself in front of Martial Union's entrance, those who don't know will think that Martial Union is bullying you and do something to you. Qing Mingyue's body was grabbed by two people. She looked at Song Ren, who was standing at the entrance, in disbelief. She was already in this state, so why was this man still so indifferent? She could not help but touch her face suspiciously. There was nothing wrong with it. She shouted without care, "You! Why won't you let me see my master and senior brother? What are you trying to do?" "Miss Cheng." Song Ren's face finally sank. The way he looked at Qing Mingyue was as if he was looking at something filthy. "Miss Cheng, do you need me to remind you what kind of disrespectful words you said last night in front of all the martial artists?" His gaze was so cold that Qing Mingyue couldn't help but shudder. Her arrogance unconsciously weakened. That's just because I was too sad and didn't mean it." "Unintentional words?" Song Ren sneered. "I'm afraid these unintentional words are Miss Cheng's true heartfelt words." He then instructed his subordinates, "All of you, stand guard at the entrance. If Miss Cheng wishes to seek death, stop her. Do not dirty my martial union's land. Of course, once martial union is out of the picture, it is none of our business." After he finished speaking, he turned around and left with a flick of his sleeves, as if he didn't want to see this repulsive woman again. It was only then that Qing Mingyue was truly exhausted. Master and senior brother really wouldn't care about him anymore. She had never been so clear about this matter. She turned around and saw the way the crowd looked at her for the first time. What she saw in front of her eyes made her widen her eyes. It was not the sympathetic and pitiful look she thought it was, but the real mockery and sarcasm. These people were all laughing at her. Chapter 1382. Qing Mingyue stared at these people with wide eyes. Among these people, she recognized some of them, but she did not recognize the majority of them. However, these people, without exception, were all looking at her with malicious gazes. Qing Mingyue tried her best to maintain the demeanor of a martial arts family's young miss and coldly said, "Everyone, hitting someone when they're down isn't something a real man would do, right?" It would have been better if she did not say this. The moment these words left her mouth, some people in the crowd sneered. "So Miss Cheng also knows what a real man is? I thought Miss Cheng didn't even know how to write the word shame. Shame is such a complicated word, how would Miss Cheng know? I think she probably doesn't even recognize words like face, right? I heard the words she said last night clearly. If I had such a disciple, I would have cleaned up the sect on the spot. How could I allow her to jump around again today? Isn't that so? She was already expelled from the sect yesterday, and today, she came here acting pitiful as if nothing had happened. She even threatened to kill herself. Miss Cheng, let me advise you. If you really want to die, go home and do it. Don't put on an act here." Every sentence was like a sharp knife stabbing into Qing Mingyue's heart. It wasn't like this. Why were these people looking at her with such gazes? Why were they saying such cold and heartless words to her? Shouldn't they be looking at her tears, lamenting in their hearts, and facing a common enemy with her? Qing Mingyue could not bear such gazes. She felt that she could not stay here any longer. She could only cover her face with her sleeves and hurriedly leave. Seeing that there was no more drama to watch, the crowd surrounding the entrance of Martial Arts Union dispersed. Qing Mingyue was secretive all the way home because she realized that people were pointing at her and whispering to each other on the way home. Qing Mingyue, who had never experienced such humiliation before, only wanted to return home and close the door, not letting anyone see her. However, before she reached home, she saw her personal maid, Xiao Tang. Why did Xiao Tang come out? She felt strange. When Xiao Tang saw her, it was as if she saw her savior. "Miss, you're finally back." Qing Mingyue faintly had a bad feeling. "What's wrong?" Xiao Tang's eyes were filled with tears. "Our residence's main doors have all been smashed." Qing Mingyue was infuriated when she heard this. The gate was the face of a mansion. Who had such a huge grudge against the Qing family? Who did it? Xiao Tang's tone was evasive. This servant saw that there were many people. Qing Mingyue glanced at it and didn't say anything. She hurried back home. From afar, she saw the smashed door of her house and many people surrounding it. "Miss, don't go there." Xiao Tang tugged at her sleeve uneasily. Qing Mingyue felt that something was wrong. She turned around and asked, "What's wrong?" Xiao Tang bit her lips and said, "Those people came to cause trouble for young Mississippi." This servant heard them scolding young Miss. Qing Mingyue's heart skipped a beat. What are they cursing about? Xiao Tang's tone became even more cautious. They scolded Miss, deceived their master and betrayed their ancestors, ungrateful, pigs and dogs. She didn't dare to finish her sentence. However, these few were enough to deal a blow to Qing Mingyue. Her body swayed a little, but she couldn't resist the hesitation in her heart. It's over, it's over. This was the only feeling Qing Mingyue had at this moment. She, Qing Mingyue, was truly finished in the Central Plains pugilistic world. Chapter 1383. Qing Mingyue was sick. This time, she wasn't pretending to be pitiful to gain sympathy. She was really sick. She hadn't been sick for a long time. Qing Mingyue, who was lying on the bed in a daze because of the fever, thought in a daze. She was born as a proud daughter of heaven. Her father treated her like a pearl and raised her. He was very nervous about the slightest disturbance. How could he give her a chance to fall sick? Later, she became the disciple of the #1 expert in the martial arts world and the junior sister of the chief of the martial arts world. More people flattered her. She thought of the last time she fell sick. It was a few years ago. It was just a small cold. The servants in the mansion were busy. Her father looked at her tirelessly. He even invited a few famous doctors in the martial arts world. In the martial arts world, who didn't envy her? Fairy Mingyue. But now? Xiao Tang came in with a bowl of black medicine. She looked helpless. Young miss, those doctors heard that the master of the Qing mansion was sick and refused to come over. This is the medicine for typhoid that I bought myself. Please be more particular. When she came in with the bowl of medicine, Qing Mingyue clearly saw a few red and swollen blisters on Xiao Tang's hands. You brewed this medicine yourself? Where are those rough servants? Qing Mingyue asked angrily. Xiao Tang avoided her gaze and said timidly, ever since the master passed away, the servants in the house ran away and ransomed. Now. She didn't finish her sentence, but Qing Mingyue already knew what she meant. Now, there were probably not many people in the Qing mansion. Qing Mingyue's expression suddenly calmed down. She took the bowl of medicine and drank it. I know. I don't need anyone to serve me. You can go and rest. Xiao Tang left. Qing Mingyue watched her leave. Xiao Tang had been by her side since she was young. She was a servant who served the young miss. Naturally, she had never done any heavy work. Today was probably the first time she brewed medicine. She lay on the bed and looked at the top of the bed with her eyes wide open. Tears finally fell from the corners of her eyes and slowly soaked the pillow. Something big happened in the martial arts world of the Central Plains. At the Martial Arts World Assembly, the current chief of the martial arts world, Zhu Yu, revealed a shocking news. He and the cult master of the devil cult were in love with each other and were about to get married. I am aware that I am no longer able to assume the position of Wulin Alliance Master, and I would like to ask my fellow Wulin Alliance Masters to choose another Wulin Alliance Master who is of virtue and prestige. If it was any other day, if someone exposed that they had an affair with the cult master of the devil sect, they would be condemned by the public. However, Zhu had accumulated a lot of prestige and was highly respected by the people of Wulin. Moreover, his actions were too calm, so calm that no one could criticize his actions. He had fallen in love with the cult leader of the devil cult, and had volunteered not to be the Wulin Union head. What could you do to him? As a result, the martial arts circle convention ended in an extremely strange atmosphere. What was most shocking was that Zhu had actually used his own name to send out invitations to all the martial artists present when the martial arts tournament ended. Wasn't he afraid of triggering a murder case? Many of the martial artists were dumbfounded by Zhu Yu's unusual approach. Yi Li, I'm sorry. Zhu Yu held Gu Xingyin's hand and apologized. Gu Xingyin turned to look at him. What's there to be sorry about? Zhu Yu looked apologetic. I said that I would give you a lively and grand wedding. However, in the martial arts world of the Central Plains, I'm afraid our wedding won't receive many blessings. Chapter 1384. After all, the martial arts world in the Central Plains had been holding a grudge against the demon sect for a long time, and it was not easy to erase it. Gu Xingyin laughed out loud. I thought you had done something wrong to me. Just this small matter? Marriage is just a matter between two people. How big of an impact would it have on us whether other people give us their blessings or not? Zhu Yu laughed as well. You're right. It doesn't matter if other people give us their blessings or not, we will still grow old together. The location of their wedding was one of Mu Qingfeng's big houses. This was specially requested by Mu Qingfeng. By doing so, he was showing the world that he was not dissatisfied with the marriage between his disciple and the demon sect's leader. In fact, he even approved of it. The number of guests at the wedding was much more than what Zhu Yu had expected. First of all, there was the demon sect. Although the members of the demon sect were not satisfied with the fact that their leader's wedding was not held at the demon sect's headquarters, they still sent a large group of people to attend their leader's wedding. Just the disciples of the demonic sect alone were enough to cause a great commotion. Not to mention the people from the martial arts world who had accepted Zhu Yu's invitation. Initially, they were all in a wait-and-see mode. However, after a while, they thought that it would be good to take this opportunity to see the legendary demon sect. Besides, there would definitely be many people who would not go because of their status. If they went, wouldn't they be able to impress Mu Qingfeng and hero Zhu Yu? Perhaps there were other reasons too. All in all, when the wedding started, the tables and chairs prepared by Zhu Yu were almost not enough. Fortunately, there were backups. Otherwise, it would be embarrassing. However, Zhu Yu was happy. No matter what these people were thinking, at least on the surface, they were here to give their blessings to him and Yi Li. Look, there are so many people giving us their blessings when we are together. He whispered in Gu Xingyin's ear. Gu Xingyin looked at the man who was lying through his teeth. She thought for a while and nodded in agreement. Those people were here to attend the wedding. Weren't they here to give their blessings? As for those who came for the demon sect's leader, they finally saw her in person. The moment they saw Gu Xingyin, they all understood why Alliance leader Zhu Yu liked such a woman. Nonsense. Which man wouldn't like such a beauty? What? You're not moved by her beauty? Bullshit. Usually, if a man said that he was not moved by beauty, it was only because he had someone he loved. Most of the time, it was because that beauty was not beautiful enough to attract him. It was no wonder that the former junior sister of the Wulin Alliance master would be jealous. The female guests present sighed inwardly as they looked at the bride's face, which was even more beautiful than the lights and moonlight. Such beauty was simply every woman's nightmare. Gu Xingyin and Zhu Yu didn't care about what the guests were thinking. They were just devoutly following the ancient ceremony and bowing to the heavens and earth. Then, under the blessings of everyone, they became a true husband and wife. The moonlight tonight was very beautiful, but to Zhu Yu, everything in front of him had lost its color and luster. In his eyes, there was only the person smiling sweetly in front of him. He looked at Gu Xingyin with satisfaction, his face full of tenderness and joy. Yi Li, I finally have you by my side. Gu Xingyin smiled faintly. Silly, my heart has been firmly tied to your body since a long, long time ago. Chapter 1385. Cheng Mingyue lay on the bed and vaguely heard the sound of music. A strange feeling rose in her heart. Xiao Tang, is there someone holding a wedding outside? She had been lying in bed for a long time and her illness was not getting better. For such a long time, the only person she had seen was Xiao Tang. Those ungrateful people saw that she was in dire straits and all of them wanted to climb up the social ladder. Thinking of this, Cheng Mingyue was angry. As for Xiao Tang, who had always stayed by his side and never abandoned him, his heart was filled with gratitude. Xiao Tang heard her words and showed a complicated expression. She lowered her head and did not speak. Seeing her like this, Cheng Mingyue was even more certain that something was going on. She said, Xiao Tang, tell me the truth. What's going on? Xiao Tang lowered her head and said quickly, Miss, today is Hero Zhu Yu's big day. Zhu Yu's big day? Qing Mingyue was in a daze for a moment before she realized that Zhu Yu was her senior brother. He was actually getting married? Qing Mingyue suddenly thought of something and asked sternly, who is the bride? When she said this, a beautiful face flashed in her mind, but she quickly rejected it. It was impossible. Senior brother was the chief of Wulin. How could he marry someone from the devil's sect, Hero Zhu Yu's new wife? She is the leader of the devil's sect. Xiao Tang's voice broke her imagination. Hearing the words leader of the devil's sect, Qing Mingyue suddenly became agitated. Who did you say his bride is? The leader of the devil's sect? How is that possible? Senior brother is the chief of Wulin. He can't marry someone who is the leader of the devil's sect. Xiao Tang said softly, but Hero Zhu Yu is no longer the chief of Wulin. What did you say? Qing Mingyue turned her head and looked at Xiao Tang. Say it again. Xiao Tang lowered her head and said softly, Hero Zhu Yu said himself that he is no longer capable of being the chief of Wulin. He has already resigned. Now the Wulin is discussing who will take over as the chief of Wulin. The room fell silent for a moment. After a while, a mournful laughter rang out in the dark room. Ha 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 ha, my good senior brother, for her, he even gave up the honor of being the Wulin Alliance's leader. What am I? Then what am I? Cough 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 cough. Xiao Tang looked at her worriedly and comforted her softly, Miss, please take care of yourself. A bowl of medicine came crashing down and landed right on Xiao Tang's forehead. Get lost. Get lost, all of you. A stinging sensation rose from the place where he was hit. He didn't know if his skin was broken. Xiao Tang lowered her eyes and did not say anything. She picked up the bowl on the ground and left. Qing Mingyue spent the whole afternoon staring at the ceiling in a daze. She didn't know what she was thinking. She hadn't looked in the mirror for a long time, because she was afraid of seeing her hideous appearance. Young miss, this servant has made some porridge. Would you like to have some? Xiao Tang pushed open the door and walked in with a tray. Qing Mingyue turned to look at her. This servant girl was the only one who was still loyal to her after her downfall. Qing Mingyue thought for a moment and reached out to take the porridge from Xiao Tang's hands. She picked up the spoon and drank 2 mouthfuls. There was minced meat in the porridge. It was obvious that it was stewed with care. It tasted fresh and fragrant. Qing Mingyue smiled at Xiao Tang and said, Xiao Tang, thank you so much for all this time. Xiao Tang lowered her eyes and did not say anything. Qing Mingyue wanted to say something, but she suddenly felt a sharp pain in her stomach. Chapter 1386. Qing Mingyue no longer had the strength to hold the bowl of porridge in her hand. The white and sticky porridge spilled onto the blanket. If it was any other time, Xiao Tang would have quickly gotten up to wipe it off. But right now, she just stood there and watched, not moving at all. Qing Mingyue felt a sharp pain in her stomach, as if there were countless sharp weapons twisting inside. She raised her head with cold sweat and looked in disbelief at Xiao Tang, who was quietly standing at the side with her head bowed. You poisoned me? Xiao Tang did not make a sound, nor did she deny it. Dark red blood flowed down from the corner of Qing Mingyue's mouth. She did not use her hand to wipe it away because there was no end to it. She just stared at Xiao Tang and asked, why? She thought that even if she fell into such a situation, there would still be someone by her side who would not leave her. She even thought that when her body was better, she would sell this residence and take Xiao Tang to live somewhere else. However, no matter how much she thought about it, she would never have thought that Xiao Tang would actually poison her. Why? Xiao Tang raised her head. Qing Mingyue saw that her eyes were deathly still. These days, there was no one to take care of Father Cheng. The servants either ran away or left. In the end, there was only this servant left. Xiao Tang stretched out her hand for Qing Mingyue to see. Qing Mingyue saw that her fair palm was full of potholes and bruises, and even broken skin. Someone once asked Xiao Tang to leave with them. Xiao Tang could not bear to see young Miss lying in bed alone without anyone to take care of you, so Xiao Tang did not go with them. Look at these hands. This servant has to cook for you and wipe you down every day. I also have to worry about people with bad intentions coming to rob this residence. During the day, I have to clean up the trash and discarded items in this residence. But what did Xiao Tang get in return? It was you who beat and scolded me. Xiao Tang still had a calm expression. In Qing Mingyue's eyes, this expression was even more terrifying than a face full of anger. A person with no desires was often the most terrifying. Qing Mingyue felt her body gradually losing strength. Her mind was already a bit dizzy. She showed a smile and tried to make herself seem more sincere. Xiao Tang, I know I was wrong. I will definitely treat you well in the future. Can you give me the antidote first? Xiao Tang raised her head and suddenly showed a smile. No, there is no antidote for this. Young miss, you can rest in peace. Qing Mingyue's eyes widened as the pain in her abdomen reached its limit. She couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood and fell down powerlessly. Xiao Tang looked at this scene coldly. She walked forward and adjusted Qing Mingyue's posture before tucking her in. From afar, Qing Mingyue looked as though she had fallen asleep. After that, she turned around and left the room without hesitation. When Gu Xingyin received the system's message, it was at an unspeakable moment. Zhu Yu gasped when she saw how agitated she was. What's wrong with you? He bit Gu Xingyin's ear as if punishing her. Gu Xingyin shook his head, and his arms tightened around her neck to make himself close to her. It's all right. Feeling her enthusiasm, Zhu Yu curled the corners of his mouth and bent down. It was the wedding night, the time when the mandarin ducks intertwined their necks. Gu Xingyin threw those irrelevant things to the back of her mind and concentrated on enjoying the passion brought by her lover. The red candles in the bridal chamber burned until dawn. Chapter 1387. When Gu Xingyin woke up in the morning, she saw that Zhu Yu was already awake. He was propping himself up and playing with a strand of her hair. How are you feeling? He knew that he had been a little reckless last night. He did not know if he had hurt her. Gu Xingyin shook her head. Zhu Yu sat up and placed Gu Xingyin's head on his thigh. He slowly combed her smooth black hair. I have already told my master that I will go to the demon sect with you tomorrow. Gu Xingyin closed her eyes comfortably. Are you in such a hurry? Zhu Yu smiled. Of course. I am still waiting for you to give me a grand wedding and marry me as your wife. Gu Xingyin opened her eyes and stared at the man on top of her. Are you serious? Zhu Yu leaned over and kissed her gently on her ear. Of course it's true. Gu Xingyin smiled. Okay. She knew what Zhu Yu meant. As the leader of the demon sect, she had gone to the Central Plains to hold a wedding. Although many disciples of the demon sect attended the wedding, they were not convinced. Zhu Yu was doing this for her sake. What else could she ask for after having such a husband? Zhu Yu and Gu Xingyin stayed together for a lifetime. After they got married, they spent most of their time at Mount Wudu. It was not that no one had ever asked Zhu Yu to come back and be the leader of the Wulin Alliance, but Zhu Yu refused. Perhaps power was something extremely important to many men in this world. However, in his eyes, it could not be compared to a dish cooked by Yi Li. Zhu Yu left the world a little earlier than Gu Xingyin. When he left, his eyes were filled with guilt. I am sorry, Yi Li. I should have held on for a little longer. He did not want to leave this world so early. If he left, Yi Li would be left alone in this world. The dead would end everything, but the one who was still alive was often the one who suffered the most. Gu Xingyin held his hand and smiled gently. It is okay. We will meet again soon. Zhu Yu, we will be together forever. Zhu Yu closed his eyes reluctantly. Gu Xingyin personally buried him on Mount Wudu, a place she had chosen long ago. When she was burying Zhu Yu, she said to the disciple beside her, after I leave a place for me here. She pointed at a place not far from Zhu Yu's grave. When the disciple heard this, a sad expression appeared on his face, but he nodded and didn't say anything. He knew how deep his master's relationship with Senior Zhu Yu was. Senior Zhu Yu's departure had most likely taken his master's life with her. Sure enough, from that day onwards, Gu Xingyin, who had always been in good health, began to deteriorate rapidly. Within a short span of 10 days, she was already unable to get out of bed. She looked at the sad appearance of the disciple beside the bed, and only smiled gently and told him not to be sad. She didn't have any regrets, nor did she have any reluctance. Just like what that disciple had thought, she should have left when Zhu Yu left. She closed her eyes peacefully. When she opened her eyes again, she was already back in the pure white space. Gu Xingyin secretly felt the power in her body, and a satisfied smile appeared on her face. Her body was simply like a perfect vessel. No matter how much spiritual energy had been boosted by the laws of the world, her body was like a bottomless pit that would devour all this energy and turn it into her own. Let's go to the next mission world. She couldn't wait to see the world outside this space. Chapter 1388. This was a very quiet space. It was very dark and very quiet. Even the wind did not dare to disturb this place. A black figure stood quietly in this dark space. She wore a thick black cloak, and a large hood hid her entire face in the shadows. Outside the wide black sleeve of her right hand, there was a hand wearing a black hood, holding a huge black sickle. The sickle was also pure black, as if any light between heaven and earth would be swallowed by the darkness when it fell on its body, not refracting any trace of light. Every time this sickle appeared, it symbolized death. Its master was the Grim Reaper of the underworld. At this moment, Gu Xingyin was looking up at the strange blood moon in the sky. System, transmit the plot. Soon, the massive plot of the world directly entered her mind. Gu Xingyin face-bombed. Ever since her soul became strong enough, the system had become not gentle at all in certain aspects. For example, during memory transfer. She still remembered that in the beginning, every time the memory was transferred, the system would be very gentle and slow, and would very considerately ask her if she felt uncomfortable. But now, it was simply and crudely packaged and transmitted all at once. Even if her divine soul was strong enough to not suffer any damage, she would still be stunned, okay? However, it was only for a moment. To Gu Xingyin, the mission was the most important thing. She began to slowly organize the plot. The Grim Reaper of this world would come to everyone's side when they were about to die and bring their souls to the underworld. Then, he would send them back to the afterlife or to some other end. When most people knew that they were about to die, they might feel fear, relief, or unwillingness. However, in the face of fate, no one could escape. Even the Grim Reaper was only doing her job. She may be able to force a person who was supposed to be dead to stay in this world, but the price she would have to pay was not something she could afford. Logically speaking, in this world, the original owner was the Grim Reaper. Furthermore, this was a modern world. Basically, the original owner was dealing with humans. Then, why did Gu Xingyin come to this world? Gu Xingyin saw the answer. This answer, Gu Xingyin was silent for a while before asking with uncertainty, "System, are you sure you're not joking?" As a deity, he was actually killed by a human woman. That human woman came from a wealthy family. She didn't have to do anything, and her wealth was more than enough for her to spend in 10 lifetimes. Such a person would naturally like to find some excitement in his life. She had been to things like bungee jumping, diving, and even the North Pole. These things could only give her a sense of excitement for a while, and then she would start to feel that the world was really boring. Until she knew about the existence of the Grim Reaper. A terrifying thought surfaced in her mind. Just thinking about it made her so excited that she couldn't sleep. She began a long preparation. And the Grim Reaper was completely unaware of all of this. That crazy woman had caught an innocent passerby and shot him to death. Then, the Grim Reaper sensed that there was a soul in need of guidance and rushed over. He fell right into the woman's trap. Chapter 1389. After Gu Xingyin finished reading the story of this world, she felt that it was all a bit ridiculous. Was there really such a crazy person in this world? Was there really someone in this world who could kill a god? The system gave her an answer. Gu Xingyin looked at the pile of information that suddenly appeared in her mind. There were all sorts of crazy people in it. She took a deep breath and said, I understand. As for killing a god, although it sounded ridiculous, it was undeniable that that woman did it. Extracting skills. Ding. Congratulations to the host for obtaining perfect acting skills. Gu Xingyin, she didn't say anything. Instead, she immediately pulled out the life and death record of the supporting female lead, He Qing. When she saw it, her eyes widened. Are you kidding me? A lifetime of riches and honor, and a lifespan of 80? The system nodded heavily. Host, you didn't make a mistake. Gu Xingyin didn't understand. How could someone like her have such a good life? She started flipping through He Qing's records and found the reason. It turned out that in her previous life, He Qing was a world-famous philanthropist. However, her ending wasn't very good. She was betrayed by her husband, her only child was kidnapped and killed by someone who hated her. She spent her last years alone. When she reincarnated, the Lord of the Underworld asked her what she wanted because she had a lot of merit on her. He Qing laughed and said, if there's a next life, I want to be a carefree person. Also, I don't want to be a good person anymore. Even if He Qing did evil in this life, she would pay for it in the next life. The merit she had accumulated in her previous life was enough for her to live a lifetime of riches and honor. Gu Xingyin closed the record book in her hand and asked, can't I ignore the records in this record book and deal with He Qing? The system nodded, yes, host. Also, even if you deal with her, unless you do it directly, you might not get the result you want. However, if you do it directly, it will go against the Grim Reaper's professional ethics. Gu Xingyin had never received such a depressing task. So what you're saying is that I can't do anything to her, and I still have to guard against her attacking me? Gu Xingyin felt as if there were several mythical beasts living in her heart. The system replied, that's right. Gu Xingyin, that He Qing is really something. I'm so angry, but I still have to maintain my smile, no, my indifference. The Grim Reaper had no emotions, so she would always have only one expression, an expressionless face. At this time, the record book in Gu Xingyin's left hand suddenly flashed with a white light. This meant that a new soul was about to appear, or had already appeared. Gu Xingyin had something to do. Let's go. Her figure blurred in an instant and disappeared from this space in the blink of an eye. This was a hospital. Gu Xingyin slowly walked in from the main entrance. The entire hospital hall was filled with people, but no one could see this person who was dressed differently. Gu Xingyin was not afraid of being seen. The living could not see the Grim Reaper. Only those who were about to die could see her. And to the dying, she had no need to hide. She walked straight into a ward. Compared to the hustle and bustle downstairs, this place was very quiet and the environment was very good. There was only one patient in the entire ward. Obviously, this person's family was very well off. Chapter 1390. This was a man with a thin face, about 40 years old. Judging from his neatly trimmed nails and neat appearance, he was well taken care of even in the hospital. Now, there was an oxygen tube at the tip of his nose. He looked at the light on the ceiling quietly. It was very quiet in the ward. There was no one else here. Gu Xingyin floated in. That's right, from a human's point of view, her feet didn't move. Instead, she glided in parallel and came directly in front of the man. She looked down at the man in front of her. The other party obviously saw her. Gu Xingyin saw the look of horror on his face at a glance. Any normal person would be scared when they suddenly saw such a strangely dressed person by their bedside. Don't be afraid. I'm here to guide you. A cold voice sounded in the man's mind. Who are you? The man felt strange after he asked. Because he didn't speak. As early as half a month ago, he couldn't speak anymore. The sentence just now was just a thought in his mind. However, he clearly made a sound and communicated with the strange person in front of him. The man looked at Gu Xingyin's appearance and the very unique sickle in her hand. Suddenly, he thought of something. His pale face became even paler. He thought that he already knew who the other party was. "Am I dying?" he asked softly. What answered him was still the same cold voice, "The living can't see me." After knowing Gu Xingyin's identity, the man calmed down. He thought for a moment and asked, "How long do I have?" Gu Xingyin glanced at the record book in her hand. 10 minutes. The man's face showed a relieved expression. He asked, "I don't have any strength now, but I want to see my daughter before I die. Can you press the call bell for me?" As soon as he said this, he suddenly felt as if something cold had entered his body. His body, which had been weak since he fell ill, was suddenly full of strength. It reminded him of a long time ago when he was very healthy. A healthy person would never understand such a feeling. At that moment, the man even had the urge to cry. He got up on his own and pulled out the oxygen tube at the tip of his nose. There were only 10 minutes left. He didn't care about these things anymore. The man smiled at Gu Xingyin, then turned to press the call button beside the bed. The nurse quickly walked in. The man looked at her. She didn't even care about the Grim Reaper standing beside her. Instead, she looked at him in surprise. "Mr. Yuan, why did you pull out the oxygen tube? Also, you look good today." The nurse suddenly stopped talking halfway through her sentence. She glanced at the man who was half sitting on the bed with a rare trace of red on his cheeks. Suddenly, a wave of bitterness rushed to the tip of her nose. She was very clear about Mr. Hara's condition. It was impossible for him to suddenly get better, unless he was experiencing terminal lucidity. The man had been very quiet. Suddenly, he said, "Is Xiao Ling in the hospital? I want to see her." He divorced his wife 7 years ago, and their only daughter, Xiao Ling, was awarded to him. Chapter 1391. The nurse nodded and said, "Xiao Ling has been accompanying you. She went downstairs to buy fruits for you." Just as the nurse finished speaking, a high school girl with a ponytail walked in. She was both surprised and happy to see the man sitting on the bed. She pounced on the bed and said, "Dad, you're awake." The man smiled and nodded. He reached out and touched his daughter's long black hair. "Xiao Ling has lost weight recently." Xiao Ling used to be impatient with such nagging until her father was hospitalized. He was in a coma more than he was awake, so he didn't have the energy to discipline her anymore. Only after her father got sick did Xiao Ling realize that being nagged by her father was a kind of happiness. She smiled and nodded. "When Dad recovers, I'll make braised pork shoulder and stew old hen soup for Xiao Ling. I'll make Xiao Ling fat again." The man smiled and didn't say anything. He suddenly asked, "Have you been to see your mother recently?" Xiao Ling's face fell. "She has a family and a child now. Why would I be in her way?" It was obvious that she didn't have a good relationship with her birth mother. The man was anxious. His parents had passed away early, and he didn't have any siblings. If he left just like that, Xiao Ling would definitely be with her mother. He advised, "After all, she's your mother. I think she's always missed you. Xiao Ling, you can't be willful in the future." Xiao Ling blinked and looked at him. "I have Dad. Dad dotes on me. Mom has a family and a child. Dad only has me." The man almost burst into tears when she said that. He suppressed his bitterness and looked at his daughter. "Xiao Ling, be good. Dad can't always be with you." His expression was too obvious, and the teenage girl seemed to have realized something. Her eyes turned red. "No. Dad will always be with Xiao Ling. I don't want to find Mom. I want Dad." She hugged the man's waist tightly, as if the man wouldn't leave her like this. Gu Xingyin watched this scene calmly. There were only 3 minutes left. The nurse couldn't help crying. Only the man still looked calm. He gently stroked his daughter's head, his eyes filled with reluctance. "Xiao Ling, no matter where I am, I will always be watching over you." The daughter in his arms had already lost her voice from crying. She only knew how to hug his waist and shake her head continuously. It was as if she wouldn't be able to hear her father's words and wouldn't have to accept such an outcome. The nurse suddenly came forward and said, "Mr. Yuan, I'll give you another examination now." She knew it was futile, but she still wanted to do something. The man shook his head and looked at the nurse. "I know my own body. There's no need to trouble yourself." When he said this, his expression was very calm, as if what he was about to face was not that difficult to accept. 1.5 minutes left. The man began to find it difficult to breathe. He tried his best to make himself look fine and said to the daughter in his arms, "Xiaoling, you have to listen to Daddy. Don't be willful in the future. Go to Mommy and listen to her. Also, in the cupboard in your room, there are things that Dad left for you. You have to keep them well and don't let others know about them easily." His consciousness was starting to blur. In the end, he looked at his daughter in his arms and said his last words in this world. "Daddy loves you." Chapter 1392. Gu Xingyin stood in the room and watched as the girl hugged her father's lifeless body and cried until she was out of breath. Beside her stood a man who looked exactly like the man on the hospital bed. It was Mr. Yuan's soul. At this moment, the man, who had been holding back his tears, looked at his daughter and cried miserably with red eyes. Gu Xingyin gave him some time to take one last look at this world. The man stayed in the ward and watched as his daughter hugged his stiff body tightly and refused to let go. In the end, she was forcefully pulled away by the hospital staff. "It's time to go," Gu Xingyin said coldly. The man wanted to stay a little longer, but there seemed to be some kind of attraction on the god of death in front of him, which made him involuntarily follow her forward. Sensing the man's resistance, Gu Xingyin said coldly, "Human, you're dead now. The human world has nothing to do with you anymore. Even if you stand in front of your daughter now, she can't see you." The man's eyes were still red, but his tears had stopped. He said bitterly, "It's okay if Xiaoling can't see me. I just want to see her more." Gu Xingyin's reply was to raise the sickle in her hand high and slash at the sky. In the man's eyes, it was like a scene from a fantasy movie. The empty sky was cut open by the sickle, and a gray door of light opened in front of the two people, a god of death and a ghost. He followed Gu Xingyin into the door. When he stepped through the door, he seemed to have sensed something and turned around to look behind him. But it was only a glance. In the next second, he was sucked into the gray door by a huge attraction. Gu Xingyin glanced at the man who had become expressionless after entering the underworld and said, "Follow me." The man obediently followed her and walked forward, completely without the previous tangled look. This was the underworld. As long as a mortal's soul entered the underworld, all of its emotions and desires would be purified, and it would become a brand new soul. After that, the gods in the underworld would arrange the next reincarnation according to the merits of their previous lives. Gu Xingyin brought him to a place where many souls like this man were standing. After bringing him here, the death god wouldn't be in charge of the rest. The Grim Reaper was only responsible for bringing souls into the underworld. As for reincarnation and the like, there were naturally other gods in charge. She flipped through the record book. In the next few days, there were no souls that she needed to be responsible for. Gu Xingyin closed the thing in his hand and sat down under a red maple tree in the underworld in a daze. She didn't know what to do. The Grim Reaper did not have human emotions and did not need to rest. Her only job was to guide the dead. When the Grim Reaper had nothing to do for the time being, he would sit under the red maple tree and stare blankly. The red maple tree was a plant that belonged to the underworld. From the roots to the branches to the leaves, everything was as red as blood. In this dark underworld, the red maple tree was the brightest color. Gu Xingyin soon felt bored. Because the Grim Reaper did not need to cultivate. It would be fine if she cultivated, but she would really sit here for an entire day. Chapter 1393. She felt that this wouldn't do. In the original plot, it only mentioned that the supporting female lead He Qing killed a god, but it didn't mention in detail how she killed a god. Although she couldn't do anything to her, she couldn't just sit there and wait for death. "System, I want to meet this He Qing," Gu Xingyin said. Her figure flashed, and she disappeared from the red maple tree. Gu Xingyin once again came to the human world. It was night time, and many office workers had finished their day's work and returned home to rest. Of course, there were also many young men and women who started their rich nightlife. He Qing belonged to the latter. She had money and time. The only thing she was worried about was how to play tonight, and how to spend money tomorrow. Gu Xingyin came to the entrance of a famous bar in the city. This bar was called a Crazy Night. It wasn't famous because of its atmosphere, but because of its chaos. Such a place, logically speaking, should have been closed down after the country's crackdown. But it wasn't. It was said that it had a strong backing, strong enough to ignore certain things. Gu Xingyin was still dressed the same way. Everyone ignored her, so she didn't feel burdened. It was indeed chaotic inside. Gu Xingyin stood quietly and looked at the stage where a few seductive women were performing a striptease. Below, many men were holding their female partners in their arms, but their eyes were lingering on the people on the stage. The lighting here was very dim, and the environment was very ambiguous. It was very suitable for doing certain things. But the dim environment didn't affect Gu Xingyin at all. She could clearly see that in a corner less than 2 meters away from her, a couple couldn't help but start a good show. In the entire hall, there were many men and women who couldn't wait to get a room. Gu Xingyin looked at all of this indifferently. Those erotic scenes were like wood in her eyes. They couldn't stir her heart at all. She was looking for her target. Found it. That woman was on the other side of the sofa. She was hugging an underage girl in her arms, and a very handsome and mature man was pouring wine for her. Gu Xingyin sized up He Qing carefully. She wasn't particularly beautiful, but she was very pleasing to the eye. Under the dim light, her exquisite and enchanting makeup made her look extremely seductive. Gu Xingyin clearly saw that when He Qing tilted her head back and downed the wine in her glass, the man sitting beside her swallowed his saliva. Clearly, he was aroused. He Qing naturally noticed it. She looked at the man with her charming eyes. Her red lips curled up and she smiled slowly. "You want to take me?" Such a straightforward and vulgar conversation did not arouse the disgust of men. On the contrary, under such circumstances, it was easier to arouse their adrenaline. The man couldn't take his eyes off the woman. He nodded and said in a low voice, "Yes, I want you." In the next second, a glass of red wine was poured on his head. The man met He Qing's cold gaze. "Can't you see that I already have a little cutie? Get lost." A trace of anger flashed across the man's face, but he obviously knew He Qing's identity and was very afraid of her. In the end, he just snorted and left. As for He Qing, she lowered her head and looked at the beautiful young man in her arms. Her expression became as gentle as water. Gu Xingyin could clearly see that although the young man tried his best to smile, a trace of fear flashed across his eyes. Gu Xingyin, this woman was indeed a lunatic. Chapter 1394. Gu Xingyin lowered his head and thought about something. Then, he saw He Qing frowning and looking straight at him. Gu Xingyin's heart skipped a beat. She was sure that there was nothing in her direction. "System, are you sure that the mission target cannot see the Grim Reaper?" The system said, "Yes, only a dying person can see the Grim Reaper." Gu Xingyin felt that something was amiss. Could it be a coincidence? He Qing also felt that something was amiss. She felt that there was a gloomy and cold aura around her today. But she looked around and did not see anything. Could it be an illusion? She frowned and made a mental note of this. Seeing that He Qing had brought the beautiful young man into a room, Gu Xingyin, who had no interest in watching a live performance, did not follow them. She found the rooftop of a large building and slowly sat down to enjoy the night breeze. She did see that He Qing's body was surrounded by a faint layer of golden light. Gu Xingyin was very familiar with this golden light. It was the golden light of merit. This was the golden light of merit that He Qing had done in her previous life. It had been protecting her in this life. Thinking of this, she had a headache. Based on the amount of merit on He Qing, she would definitely have a smooth sailing life in this life. Even if she did something bad in this life, she would have to pay for it in her next life. She could not attack her at all. The best defense was offense. But this time, Gu Xingyin could only defend. She could only let the system watch He Qing's every move to prevent her from having any chance to attack her. Looking at the bustling city lights in the distance, Gu Xingyin's heart suddenly opened up. The system was puzzled. "Host, you've thought it through?" Gu Xingyin smiled. But this smile was hidden under the large cloak. Even the system did not see it. "So what? I can't attack her, so I'll just wait. A mortal's lifespan is only a few decades. So what if I hide from her for a few decades? As long as I can keep myself alive for the next few decades, I'll have completed the mission, right? If the system knew that emoji packs existed in this world, it would look like this, oh. So you can think of it this way. My host is really smart." Gu Xingyin didn't say anything else. She said it so casually, but she felt that things weren't that simple. Otherwise, in the original plot, how could He Qing, who couldn't see the existence of the Grim Reaper, kill the Grim Reaper? "Are you, the Grim Reaper?" A young but excited voice came from behind Gu Xingyin. Gu Xingyin turned around and looked at the little boy who had appeared behind her in surprise. He was probably 7 or 8 years old. He was wearing a white shirt and a small suit. He was so handsome that he looked like a little prince in a fairy tale. At this moment, the young prince was looking at a person in a black cloak not far away. This person's appearance was exactly the same as the Grim Reaper in the myths. Gu Xingyin was surprised. "You can see me?" At the same time, she asked the system. "What's going on?" The moment she saw the little boy, she subconsciously flipped through the record book in her hand. But there were no relevant records. Her lover was not recorded in the record book. The little boy tilted his head and looked at her. He felt that this person who looked like the Grim Reaper looked very familiar. He couldn't help but take 2 steps forward. "Why can't I see you?" Chapter 1395. Gu Xingyin looked at the little boy in front of her and suddenly said, "Don't come over." The little boy obediently stood still and did not move. Gu Xingyin carefully looked at his face and didn't find any death aura. In other words, he was different from those people who could see her. Those people could only see death gods like her because they were about to die, but the boy in front of her wasn't like that. While the system was looking for the reason for this situation, Gu Xingyin was also flipping through the death god's tens of thousands of years of memories. Finally, she found a possibility in a corner Heaven's Eye. There was a group of people who were born with yin and yang eyes and could see ghosts and gods. Their eyes were called Heaven's Eye. People who had Heaven's Eye were good seedlings to cultivate Taoist magic. But in this era, Taoist magic was declining, so not many people paid attention to this. As for why his name wasn't in the record book, the system couldn't explain it. Gu Xingyin couldn't find any precedent. She looked at the boy and suddenly asked, "What's your name?" The little boy saw the mysterious death god talking to him and happily answered her, "My name is Qiao Zhihe." Qiao Zhihe looked at the person in front of him and felt very strange. He didn't know if the person in front of him was the legendary death god. Her appearance was exactly the same as the death god described in the book, but the book said that the death god was evil and terrifying. But he didn't feel any of this from this death god's sister. He felt that this death god's sister was very close. Gu Xingyin looked at the little boy who was looking at her with his grape-like eyes and her mood softened. "What are you looking at?" she asked in a low voice. Qiao Zhihe stood there and seemed to be very embarrassed, but the desire in his eyes was very obvious. "Death god sister, can I touch your scythe?" His eyes were shining as he looked at the scythe in Gu Xingyin's right hand. It was really cool. Gu Xingyin casually said, "You can, but this is a magic tool from the underworld. Normal people can't touch it." Before she could finish her words, she saw Qiao Zhihe happily place his hand on her sickle. "Gu Xingyin, system, can you come out and explain?" After a while, the system said, "Host, this is beyond the scope of your authority." Gu Xingyin chuckled. One day, she would know everything that she wanted to know. Young master. A terrified voice came from behind. Gu Shengyin and Xiao Zhihe turned their heads at the same time. A young man in a suit was looking at them with a face full of fear. In his eyes, his young master was standing very close to the edge of the rooftop and was even stretching out his hand to look outside. It was simply too dangerous. The young man in charge of Xiao Zhihe was so scared that his heart almost jumped out. Gu Shengyin glanced at him and knew what he was thinking. She suddenly said in a low voice, "My existence is a little secret between us. Little Crane, don't tell anyone, okay?" Children loved these little secret games the most. Xiao Zhihe nodded with a face full of excitement, "Yes. Little Crane will definitely not tell anyone. Daddy and Mommy won't tell either." "Young master, what are you talking about here alone?" The young man rushed over and didn't see Gu Shengyin standing at the side. He was talking endlessly with a face full of fear. Chapter 1396. Xiao Zhihe turned around and glanced at Gu Shengyin, feeling very strange in his heart. Sister Death was here, but Brother Ahao couldn't see her. He thought of his promise with Gu Shengyin, so he pursed his lips tightly and shook his head without saying anything. The young man called Ahao didn't ask any more questions. He just held his hand and walked back. "Sir and Madam are worried sick. Let's go back quickly." Xiao Zhihe was led by Ahao as he walked back. Gu Shengyin looked at him and suddenly waved her hand, making a goodbye gesture. Xiao Zhihe smiled and waved back. Then he saw the other party suddenly stand up. A pair of huge black wings stretched out from her back. She jumped and disappeared into the night sky. Xiao Zhihe's eyes widened. His eyes were full of splendor. That was really too cool. Then he was carried by Ahao. "Young master, the rooftop is not fun at all. It's very dangerous. In the future, you can't come here alone anymore." Gu Shengyin didn't actually leave. She just found a place where Xiao Zhihe couldn't see and then quietly followed. She saw Xiao Zhihe being led by the young man called Ahao to a magnificent hall. There seemed to be a banquet being held inside. A well-dressed couple hurried over when they saw Xiao Zhihe. Their expressions were filled with anxiety. They were Xiao Zhihe's parents. She sat on the rooftop of another building far away, looking at the little child, and fell into deep thought. On the other side, Xiao Zhihe seemed to be in a daze the whole night. His father sat beside him and poured a glass of juice for his son. "Xiao He, why don't you look happy at all?" Xiao Zhihe raised his head, looking very serious. It was just that he wasn't even 7 years old and had a very cute baby fat on his face. His serious look made him look even cuter. Father Xiao almost laughed out loud, but seeing his son like this, he held it back. He had to leave some face for the little boy. "Dad, I have a question," Xiao Zhihe said. Father Xiao was very patient. "What's wrong with little Crane?" Then he saw his son ask with sparkling eyes, "Is there a grim reaper in this world?" "Father Xiao, have you read too many fairy tales?" But he certainly couldn't answer like that. Hence, Father Xiao pretended to be deep in thought. When he lowered his head, he saw his son's nervous gaze. He couldn't help but laugh. "There's no grim reaper. That's all in fairy tales. Everyone's imagination." Although children needed to be coaxed, Father Xiao didn't coax his son. His son's education was very important to him. There were some things that should be told the truth, so he tried his best not to replace it with lies. Xiao Zhihe was a little disappointed. He really wanted to tell his father that he had seen a grim reaper tonight. She was like a fairy tale character, wearing a thick black cloak. Her face could not be seen clearly, and she held a huge black scythe in her hand. She was simply very handsome. Moreover, she wasn't as bad as what was written in the books. However, Xiao Zhi remembered the agreement between the two of them and decided to keep his little secret. He was the only one who could see Sister Death. Chapter 1397. After returning home, Xiao Zhihe was severely taught a lesson by his parents. This lesson was actually that the two of them ignored him for the whole night, and no one said good night to him when he went to bed. And the reason was that Hao told the two that the young master ran to the rooftop alone, and walked to the edge of the area where there was no railing. God, that was more than 60 floors. The young couple was scared when they heard the news. At first, they thought that their son sneaked away because he was playful, but they didn't expect him to go to such a dangerous place. For this kind of thing, they naturally had to punish him well, so that he would remember it a little. Qiao family couple couldn't punish their son physically. The two of them thought for a long time before coming up with such a method. Thus, the poor little Bun Xiao Zhihe was ignored. The young master felt wronged. He sat on the bed alone with his pillow. The curtains of the big floor-to-ceiling window were originally drawn, but he pulled the curtains open, and he could see the garden downstairs. Xiao Zhihe understood why his parents ignored him. Because he didn't listen and ran to such a dangerous place alone. But Death's sister was there. He felt wronged and at a loss. If he didn't see Death's sister, he definitely wouldn't go to such an outside place. But he couldn't tell his parents, because he promised Death's sister that he wouldn't tell anyone else. Even if it was his parents, he couldn't. The little Xiao Zhihe pouted. If only Death's sister was here, he could tell her. What do you want to say to me? A cold voice appeared in his bedroom. Xiao Zhihe blinked and looked at the black figure in front of him. When did Death's sister appear? He had been sitting on the bed the whole time, but in an instant, Sister Death appeared beside his bed. Xiao Zhihe's eyes widened, and he even forgot his sadness. Instead, he looked at Gu Xingyin with a face of surprise. Death's sister, when did you come? Gu Xingyin looked at him and wanted to laugh, but she just said lightly, I sensed that you were calling me, so I came. She stood there and asked again, what do you want to say to me? When she smelled it, Xiao Zhihe remembered his own matter. He pursed his lips and told her what had happened today. Finally, he pouted and said, I know I made Mom and Dad worried. I also apologized, but they still ignored me. At the end of his speech, Gu Xingyin looked at the little man and her eyes turned red. However, she forced herself not to let her tears fall. Xiao Zhihe told himself that his father had said that a man should not cry easily. He had to protect his mother. This kind of sensible and cute child was the most lovable, not to mention that Gu Xingyin was biased towards Xiao Zhihe. She thought for a moment and said, don't be sad. Your parents will come to say good morning to you tomorrow. Xiao Zhihe's eyes lit up. Really? Gu Xingyin said with certainty, of course it's true. She had just heard Xiao Zhihe's mother say it herself. The expression on Xiao Zhihe's face relaxed a little, but he still looked a little unhappy. Gu Xingyin looked at his rare appearance. She thought for a moment and had an idea. Little Crane, are you willing to play a game with me? Chapter 1398. Xiao Zhihe's eyes widened as he looked at the scenery below him. This was a beauty he had never imagined. If someone used a telescope to take a picture of the sky at this time, they might be able to see a little boy floating in the sky in a strange posture, looking at the scenery below. It was like a dream. Xiao Zhihe still remembered that after Sister Death asked that question, he did not hesitate to put his hand in her gloved palm. Then, he noticed that he was being carried and left the ground. Yes, leave. He looked up and could only see the darkness under the heavy hood. When he looked up a little higher, he could see the beautiful black wings behind Sister Death. He was now in the sky. Every little boy would have a dream about flying when he was young. This was different from sitting on a plane. It was not sitting in a closed cabin, but standing in the air. He could reach out his hand and feel the wind gently caressing his body. He could also look down and see the lights of thousands of homes below him. Xiao Zhihe's face was full of amazement. Gu Xingyin looked at him softly and asked, do you feel better now? Xiao Zhihe nodded vigorously. He was so excited that his heart was about to jump out. Gu Xingyin took him and slowly soared in the sky. They flew for almost 2 hours. Xiao Zhihe never knew that the city he lived in looked like this from above. In the end, the child was sent home by Gu Xingyin. Facing the little prince's eyes, Gu Xingyin ruthlessly refused him. You should sleep now. Otherwise, Mom and Dad will scold you when they see your dark circles tomorrow. Well, hearing the unquestionable tone in Sister Death's voice, Xiao Zhihe could only obediently nod. Then, he heard a cold "good night" by his ear, and the person beside him disappeared. She really is the mysterious Sister Death, Xiao Zhihe thought. The next day, when Mother Qiao opened the door of her son's room, she saw 2 big dark circles. Gu Xingyin did not think of this. After experiencing such an exciting night, how many normal people could sleep? Not to mention the 7-year-old Xiao Zhihe. Xiao Zhihe was worried that he would be scolded by his mother. However, Mrs. Qiao clearly misunderstood. She thought that her son was unable to sleep because he had been taught a lesson last night. For a moment, her heart ached and she blamed herself. She hugged Xiao Zhihe and rubbed his heart. Xiao Zhihe was carried by his mother with a confused look on his face. Clearly, he did not understand the situation at all. But as a man, he had to take responsibility for his mistakes. That was what Sister Death had told him. Therefore, Xiao Zhihe patted her chest and said to her mother that she really knew that she was wrong. She would never do such a dangerous thing again. When Mother Qiao saw that her son still didn't forget to admit his mistake, she felt both bitter and proud. From then on, he doted on his son even more. After playing with Xiao Zhihe for a day, Gu Xingyin returned to the underworld. The system told her that He Qing's next plan was to go skiing in the snowy mountains of Shibua. Anyway, this woman's hobby was always adventurous and exciting. Gu Xingyin was not surprised. The last time she went to see He Qing, she didn't find anything out of the ordinary other than having a lot of merit. She slowly relaxed. Chapter 1399. Gu Xingyin thought that she should stay far away from this woman. Stay far away from her. If He Qing couldn't find her, she couldn't possibly set her sights on her, right? He Qing went skiing. With her financial resources, she naturally booked the entire place. Gu Xingyin tried it. She used a small trick to cause a slight avalanche. She just wanted to see just how good He Qing's life was. The result didn't disappoint her at all. If an ordinary person encountered that avalanche, the chances of dying would be more than 80%. However, He Qing didn't even suffer a fracture. It was because of the cold that she caught a small cold. She didn't even have a fever. She could be fine after drinking a cup of water and taking a pill. Gu Xingyin, on the other hand, felt a sense of oppression from the unseen world. This was a warning from the heavenly Tao. As the god of death, she just had to do her job well. She smiled bitterly. In the end, she gave up on the idea of doing something in the dark. In terms of duties, Gu Xingyin wasn't busy. There were many gods of death like her in the underworld. Each person only needed to be in charge of a specific area. In this case, the workload wasn't huge. Therefore, sometimes, she might have to guide many people in a day. Sometimes, no one died for several days. Sometimes, Xiao Zhihe would call for her. If she was free, she would go and see her little prince. Gu Xingyin had never interacted with her lover like this. She had been his sister, his disciple, his master, and even his nurturer. But she had never appeared in his life as an idol-like existence like now. To the current Xiao Zhihe, Sister Death was a mysterious and intimate god. She was very powerful and knew many things that he couldn't even imagine. Although she looked cold, she would try her best to satisfy his every request. Xiao Zhihe felt that Sister Death was much more powerful than those so-called superheroes in the movies. However, she seemed to be very busy and only had time to visit him occasionally. Xiao Zhihe had once asked if Sister Death was busy saving the world like the superheroes in the movies. His words almost made Gu Xingyin laugh. Her tone was as cold as ever. Little Crane, you can go look for some information. We Grim Reapers are not heroes. We are the exact opposite of the popular superheroes. Humans hate Grim Reapers the most. Because our appearance can only mean death. She didn't say much, but the little Xiao Zhihe remembered her words in his heart. When he grew up and learned to think independently, he slowly searched for information about the Grim Reaper. This information also allowed him to understand his big sister Death better. The Grim Reaper was a deity of the underworld. They wore black cloaks and black gloves. Their entire bodies were shrouded in darkness. No one could see their faces. The black scythe was a divine weapon for harvesting souls. Their appearance represented death. Those who could see the Grim Reaper were all souls that were about to enter the underworld. Xiao Zhihe started to feel a little puzzled when he read to the end. All the information stated that mortals could not see the Grim Reaper. Only those who were about to die could see it. But he could see Sister Death all the time. Chapter 1400. If only someone who was about to die could see Sister Death, then he had been dead for many years. Xiao Zhihe shook his head and didn't take it seriously. He was vaguely curious about another matter. In the blink of an eye, 3 years had passed. This year, Xiao Zhihe was 14 years old and had reached the age of first awakening of love. This year, He Qing was 28 years old and was still playing around in the human world. Gu Xingyin had been in this world for 7 years. She had completely adapted to today's life. While paying attention to He Qing's movements, she would occasionally visit Xiao Zhihe. Most of the time, she was bringing the souls of the dead back and forth between the worlds of the living and the dead. The system couldn't help but sigh, this was really the most dedicated world for the host. Wasn't it dedication? Gu Xingyin had completed the work of the death god perfectly. But Gu Xingyin actually felt stifled. Sometimes, when she looked at He Qing, she wished she could kill her with her own hands. This woman, if not for her great fortune in her previous life, she would have died countless times in this life. She had no morals at all. Gu Xingyin stayed by her side and watched as she forced the handsome young men she fancied to submit to her. He watched as her private life was messy, and he watched as she did some shady things in private. She even injected drugs into an innocent person with her own hands. She couldn't stop it, because the death god couldn't care about the affairs of the human world. She had tried many times to send the evidence to the police. The evidence was enough to send anyone to prison for 8 to 10 years. But it was useless. When the evidence was sent to the police, it either became a stack of white paper with nothing on it, or it became fake. Gu Xingyin then knew that He Qing really couldn't be brought down in this life. She unscrupulously enjoyed the good fortune left behind by her previous life, and in the next life, she had to bear the sins of this life. Was this fair? It wasn't. But what could Gu Xingyin say? She was just a death god who relied on this world's heavenly axiom to survive. She couldn't get out of this situation. Gu Xingyin sometimes wanted to avoid it, but she couldn't help it. Even if she couldn't do anything, she wanted to watch and remember. There would always be one person who would silently witness all the sins that this woman had committed. He would remember them all. The 14th birthday of the Qiao family's young master was held in the Qiao family's villa. The Qiao family didn't publicize the news, but they knew what they needed to know. He was the only son of the Qiao family's 3rd generation and the future head of the Qiao family. Such an identity was very precious. However, Xiao Zhihe seemed a little absent-minded the entire day. The meticulous Xiao Mu looked at her son and quietly pulled him to the side. "What's wrong, Xiao He? You seem to have something on your mind." Xiao Zhihe showed a gentle smile. "Mom, you worry too much. I'm fine." His smile was very clean, like the most dazzling warm sun in early spring. It was said that the young master of the Qiao family had inherited all the advantages of his parents' looks. When he grew up, he would be amazing. Xiao Mu looked at her son and couldn't help but feel proud. After waiting for the banquet to end and the guests to leave, Xiao Zhihe used the excuse that he was tired and wanted to rest. He then returned to his room. Sister Death God is back, right? She would remember her birthday every year. Chapter 1401. Xiao Zhihe sat on the bed, waiting for Gu Xingyin's arrival. He was even thinking about what gift Sister Death would bring him. Just as he lowered his head to think, a cold wind blew, and Xiao Zhihe raised his head happily. Sister Death. He still didn't know Gu Xingyin's name, so he had always called her Sister Death. The wide black cloak quietly fell to the ground, and the pure black scythe was cold and sharp. But Xiao Zhihe wasn't afraid at all. He knew that this person wouldn't hurt him. Gu Xingyin gently opened her hand, and a dark red light rose from her palm, slowly flying in front of Xiao Zhihe. After the red light faded, its original appearance was revealed. It was a droplet-shaped red crystal, about the size of a thumb, reflecting a beautiful luster under the light. "Happy birthday, little crane," Gu Xingyin said softly. Xiao Zhihe put this beautiful stone under his pillow very carefully. Gu Xingyin said, "This thing can protect your safety at a critical moment." She thought for a moment, moved her hands, and the stone under Xiao Zhihe's pillow returned to her hands. But at this time, there was an extra red line on the stone. "Lower your head," Gu Xingyin said. Xiao Zhihe immediately understood what she wanted to do. He lowered his head obediently. A 14-year-old boy was no shorter than death. But Xiao Zhihe was very curious. The hood clearly didn't completely cover Sister Death's face, but why couldn't he see it clearly? He suddenly raised his head. The two were very close, and Gu Xingyin's hand was still on his neck. From afar, the two looked like they were hugging. At such a close distance, Xiao Zhihe could only see a beautiful pale chin. His heart moved, and he wanted to do something, but Gu Xingyin had already let go of his hand and took a step back. For some reason, Xiao Zhihe's heart suddenly surged with disappointment. He didn't even know where this disappointment came from. Gu Xingyin looked at him quietly. "You are unhappy." Xiao Zhihe froze for a moment. Was he unhappy? What was he unhappy about? Gu Xingyin looked at his blank face and sighed in her heart. She just thought that it was a change in the temperament of an adolescent child. She looked at him and suddenly said, "Today is your birthday. I'll grant you a wish, okay?" Xiao Zhihe's eyes lit up as the faint anticipation in his heart began to stir. Gu Xingyin saw the child in front of her looking at her with bright eyes. "Sister Death, can you promise me two things?" Gu Xingyin shook her head slightly. He stretched out a finger. Her meaning was very clear. She could only agree to one request. Xiao Zhihe hesitated for a moment and said, Then can you pull down your hood and let me see what you look like?" He had known Death since he was 7 years old. But until the age of 14, other than calling her Big Sister Death, he didn't even know her name or what she looked like. Gu Xingyin was stunned. She didn't expect that Xiao Zhihe would make such a request. Seeing that she didn't move for a long time, Xiao Zhihe couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. "Sister Death?" When he shouted this, there was a coquettish tone in his voice that even he didn't notice. Chapter 1402. Only in front of people who were extremely close to him, would the gentle and polite young master of the Qiao family show a trace of childishness. Gu Xingyin had no resistance to Xiao Zhihe at all. She hesitated for a moment, and finally, under the child's burning gaze, she stretched out her hand and pulled down the hood on her head. Xiao Zhihe's eyes widened. The moment the hood was pulled down, silver-gray hair flowed down like a waterfall. And Xiao Zhihe's eyes were tightly held by the person in front of him. Gray hair, gray eyes, obviously different from a human's appearance. But on her, it didn't feel out of place at all. The Death in front of him had a delicate face that was difficult to describe with a brush, but at the same time, because of the bloodless face and overly pale lips, this delicate face had a hint of fragility. Of course, this fragility was indeed just a look, and no one dared to underestimate the sickle of the Death. Xiao Zhihe looked at this person without blinking. Since he was 7 years old, he had been fantasizing about the appearance of Sister Death in his mind. He once wondered if the other party would be like the description in fairy tales, a skeleton? Perhaps a strange creature that looked completely different from a human, or a beautiful female god. When he really saw her face, he thought, so this is what Sister Death looks like. That's right, Sister Death should look like this. He stared blankly until the other party's gaze looked over. It was almost a cold gaze, but after 7 years of living with the Death in front of him, Xiao Zhihe's cold heart was actually very soft. Xiao Zhihe's gentle face suddenly burst into a very bright smile, his bright eyes gazed at Gu Xingyin, and almost said in an excited tone, "Sister Death, you're really beautiful." Gu Xingyin heard this and didn't have any reaction. She only stretched out her hand and pulled back the hood that had just fallen down. Once again, her stunning appearance was completely covered. "Appearance, for me, is just a skin." Her cold voice came from the cloak. Qiao Ji he glanced at the black hood with some regret. Hearing her words, he couldn't help but laugh, but to many humans, beautiful skin is their lifelong pursuit. Gu Xingyin didn't debate with Qiao Jiha on this issue. The record book in her hands suddenly lit up, which meant that she had something to do. "I have something to do, so I'll leave first. You should rest early." Her cold voice sounded in the room. Qiao Jiha opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but the other party had disappeared. He looked at the place where the other party stood before, and stared blankly for a while, and suddenly laughed again. Lowering his head, Qiao Jiha grabbed the red crystal in the shape of a water droplet. "I don't know what it is, but for Sister Death to treat it so seriously, it should be something very important, right?" He sat there and thought silently for a while. Feeling a little sleepy, he fell asleep in a daze. Qiao Jiha felt very hot. Every cell in his body was clamoring, and there seemed to be a fire burning in the depths of his body. He needed something to quench his thirst, to relieve the restlessness that was everywhere. Suddenly, a cold arm reached out from beside him. Chapter 1403. The eldest daughter, who was holding old Master Zhang's hand, saw him nod, but she didn't understand what he meant. The next moment, old Master Zhang found that he could speak. His body seemed to have returned to when he was young. However, he remembered the words of the black figure just now. He only had 10 minutes left. Although he really wanted to scold these ingrates that he had raised, he obviously had more important things to do at this moment. Old Master Zhang looked at the man standing at the side. "Lawyer Qi, I have something to ask of you." His lawyer quickly walked over. Everyone in the room was amazed. Just now, this old man looked like he was about to die. They didn't expect him to suddenly wake up. However, some people guessed that it might be the final radiance of the setting sun. Old Master Zhang glanced into the room. He was worried that these three good-for-nothings would come back and cause trouble later, so he told them to all leave. His three children looked a little uneasy, but under the gazes of others, they didn't dare to do anything. They could only walk out. When the room quieted down, old Master Zhang looked at the lawyer beside him. "Lawyer Qi, please draft a new will for me." About 8 minutes later, Lawyer Qi walked out with a serious expression. He looked at old Master Zhang's children without leaving a trace. Then, he turned around. "Old Master Zhang, he. Everyone, go in and see him for the last time." Everyone hurried into the room. Sure enough, they saw that old Master Zhang, who was still in high spirits just now, had started to turn green. It was obvious that he had reached the last step. Old Master Zhang forced his eyes open. He looked at his three children and smiled. He opened his mouth, but in the end, he closed his eyes weakly. "Dad! Dad!" The three of them started crying when old Master Zhang closed his eyes. The guests at the side all said that old Master Zhang had enjoyed enough good fortune in this life to have 3 filial children. Old Master Zhang, who was lying on the bed, was now standing beside Gu Xingyin. He looked at his slightly transparent body with curiosity, then looked at his old body on the bed. "Aren't you sad?" A cold voice sounded in his ear. Turning around to look at the Grim Reaper beside him, old man Zhang laughed. "What am I sad about? I've already enjoyed everything that I should have in this world. The last few days were even a little painful. After I died, I felt a sense of relief and strength that I had not felt for a long time. Furthermore, before he died, he even took revenge for her, didn't he?" "Then come with me," Gu Xingyin said faintly and turned to leave. Old man Zhang followed behind her and asked, "Can I see the fate of my 3 evil creatures before I leave?" Gu Xingyin paused for a moment, then stretched out a hand and pointed at the void. Old Master Zhang saw what was about to happen. At the end of his funeral, before all the guests had left, Lawyer Qi announced the will he had made before his death. All the assets under his name had been donated to welfare organizations, leaving nothing for his children. His 3 daughters naturally refused to believe it. They had planned for so long and even done such a thing. Wasn't it all for this wealth? Lawyer Qi's expression didn't change at all when someone pointed at his nose and accused him of tampering with the will. Apart from the will, old Master Zhang also suspects that his death is related to Miss Zhang and the 2 Mr. Zhangs. I've already called the police. The police will talk to the 3 of you later. Old Master Zhang watched in silence and didn't say anything else. He followed Gu Xingyin into the underworld. Chapter 1404. Recently, He Qing felt that her spring had come. The 30-year-old woman felt that her heart, which had never been moved before, was beating because of a man. She had met that man in a surfing competition. He was tall and strong, and he was also very good-looking. After a while, the 2 of them successfully hooked up in bed. It was originally a consensual adult game, but He Qing felt that she was getting more and more immersed in it. With her personality, she would never allow herself to be taken advantage of. Since she had taken a fancy to him, he was naturally hers. That man had a family, and he was not willing to break up his family because of a casual relationship. He Qing agreed on the surface, but the next moment, she began to secretly find someone to deal with his wife. Her methods were very rough. Since you can't bear to part with your wife, just make her disappear. She found someone to create an accident when the man's wife got off work. Gu Xingyin saw a faint gray aura on the poor woman, that was the color of the dead. In other words, He Qing's plan would succeed. The woman would die in a traffic accident today, and the driver would have to compensate a large sum of money. But what he could get from He Qing was far more than that. When the car with a faulty brake hit the woman, Gu Xingyin's hand moved in her sleeve. The woman only felt that there was a force pushing her, and she fell to the side. Before she could understand what had happened, she saw a car whizzing past her, at such a speed, if it hit her, she would have no chance of survival. There was no one beside her, but at that moment, she did feel a force acting on her body. The woman thought for a while, put her hands together and prayed to the heavens, and continued to walk forward. Gu Xingyin heard the sound of thunder. Her body suddenly stiffened, and then she squatted down in pain. Except for her, no one else heard this sound. The heavenly Tao of this world warned her that if there was a next time, there would be no mercy. When the sudden pain in her body gradually disappeared, Gu Xingyin stood up expressionlessly. She found the so-called heavenly Tao of this world laughable. In this life, He Qing had committed countless evil deeds, but because of her so-called merits in her previous life, she was able to live a wealthy and stable life until she was old. What did that woman do wrong? Her husband cheated on her, and the woman who intervened in her marriage wanted her life. However, the heavenly Tao did not care about this. It did not even allow others to care about it. Was this the so-called fate? Gu Xingyin looked at the woman from afar and found that the gray color on her body did not decrease. She lowered her eyes. She knew in her heart that that woman would not live past tonight. Even if she avoided the car accident, the woman would die in another accident. As expected, when it was close to dawn, the record book in Gu Xingyin's hand glowed faintly. Seeing the familiar name, Gu Xingyin pursed her lips. She walked into a small alley and saw a woman who had been stabbed several times and was lying in a pool of blood. Her soul was floating in mid-air, staring blankly at her own body. Your days in the human world have come to an end. Come with me. A cold voice came from beside her. The woman turned her head and saw death standing beside her. Chapter 1405. Death God. The woman looked at Gu Xingyin and guessed her identity. Gu Xingyin didn't say anything. The woman continued, "Are you here to take me away?" Gu Xingyin nodded, "I'll take your soul to the underworld." The woman didn't say anything and prepared to leave with Gu Xingyin. There wasn't even a hint of reluctance on her face. Gu Xingyin felt a bit strange, but as a death god, she shouldn't care too much about these things. Until the door to the underworld opened and the woman was about to walk in, she suddenly smiled at her. "When we were on the road, it was you, right?" I sensed your presence. That cold feeling was the same as now. The woman looked at Gu Xingyin and smiled, thank you. Gu Xingyin didn't say anything and watched the woman walk in. The expression on her face disappeared and she became silent. She suddenly felt a bit annoyed with her mission. If only she didn't know anything. But even though she knew everything, she couldn't do anything. She could only watch as the people who deserved to die lived freely, while the innocent met a tragic end because of their so-called fate. She finally understood why the death god didn't have any emotions and was cold. Only without any emotions could she coldly look at all the unfair things in the world. For the gods, a human's life, a few decades, was just a blink of an eye. And everything had a cycle. She lived a miserable life in this life, but she might be able to live a good life in the next. There was nothing to be conflicted about. But Gu Xingyin couldn't do it. She raised her head and looked at the eternal gray sky of the underworld. She actually had the urge to escape. Ding! Detected that the host has negative emotions. Please adjust your emotions as soon as possible. Please adjust your emotions as soon as possible and complete the mission with a positive heart. The system's voice sounded in her ears. Gu Xingyin came back to her senses and said calmly, I know. But no matter if I'm positive or negative, I'll just hide far away and watch He Qing live out her life in glory, right? The system, it seemed to be true, and it had nothing to say. Seeing that the system had fallen silent because of her words, Gu Xingyin thought for a moment and said, however, I can slowly observe and see what will happen to her in her next life, right? The system perked up. Yes, host. Originally, according to the merit accumulated from the mission, as long as she did not seek death, she could have lived a wealthy life for more than 3 generations. However, she had committed so many sins in her life that these merits could not even make up for her sins. In her next life, her life will definitely be very miserable. Whether or not she can be reincarnated into a human is another matter. Gu Xingyin nodded and did not say anything else. At this moment, the man and the system both thought that this world's mission would be completed just like that. However, there was nothing definite about fate. He Qing was with that man. After the man's wife died, he was depressed for a period of time. It was rare for He Qing to chase away all the women around her and put down her hobby of adventuring to focus on staying by his side. She was such a beautiful woman, and she was doing her best for him. Anyone could see that she had feelings for him. Not many men would be able to reject such luck. Chapter 1406. That man and He Qing naturally got together. Gu Xingyin watched coldly from the side. He Qing seemed to have really fallen for him this time. When she was with this man, she didn't go to places like nightclubs and send all her lovers away. She was really like an ordinary woman, accompanying that man. The two of them lived a very happy life. For some reason, looking at He Qing like this, Gu Xingyin was relieved. It was a good thing that she could settle down and stop doing evil. But one day, Gu Xingyin saw that man's name in her record book. Usually, the Grim Reaper wouldn't take the initiative to flip through the record book unless the name on it lit up. And when the name lit up, it meant that that person was about to die. That man's name hadn't lit up yet, but his name appeared on the first 3 pages of Gu Xingyin's record book. Usually, the Grim Reaper wouldn't look at the names on these pages because it was troublesome. Anyway, what they needed to do was to take those names to the underworld when they lit up. Those who were on the first 3 pages would be rotated down in order. It meant that those who were about to die were not under their control. Gu Xingyin took a look under the system's reminder and found the man's name. He had cancer. It was in the late stage. He only had 4 months left to live. Gu Xingyin almost immediately thought of He Qing's reaction. That crazy woman wouldn't do anything, would she? Her premonition was very accurate. That man said that he wasn't feeling well. At first, they thought that it was a small illness. After He Qing insisted on going to the hospital for a checkup, the results made them despair. The hospital that examined the man said that there was no way. The cancer had spread and couldn't be treated. He Qing didn't believe it. She took the man to the most famous hospitals in the country, but the results were the same. After that, they went abroad. But for such a disease, even the best hospital and the best doctor couldn't do anything. Gu Shengyin was inexplicably worried. She had known He Qing's character for so long and knew it well. If this woman really went crazy, it was terrifying. After confirming that there was no other way, the two of them returned home. Perhaps He Qing's efforts during this period of time had paid off. That man also had good feelings for her. Seeing her like this, he even comforted her. "It's okay, Qing. I'm fine now." He Qing just quietly leaned her head against the man's chest. "I won't let you die, no matter what the price is." Since there was no other way with technology, they would have to resort to extreme measures. He Qing began to visit the famous feng shui masters in the hall to see if she could find a way to extend her life. Most of the masters didn't even want to look at her when they saw the sins she had accumulated in her life. People like them knew more about certain things, and the most taboo thing was to be tainted with karma and sin. He was also tempted by He Qing's offer, but after seeing the man's condition, he shook his head. An old man said to He Qing, "You're too late. If I had discovered it earlier, I could have thought of a way to prolong his life. But now, his name has already been recorded in the Grim Reaper's record book. There's no other way." "Grim Reaper?" He Qing asked in confusion. Wasn't that a god from the myths and legends? Did it really exist? Chapter 1407. Seeing that she was interested, the old man told He Qing some of the things he knew. After that, he shook his head and said, "Madam, you should go back and spend more time with your husband. Forgive me for not being able to help." He Qing left without saying anything. When she returned home, the man was sitting on the balcony in his home clothes, basking in the sun. The pain of his illness made his body thin rapidly. Now, he was no longer as handsome as He Qing liked. If it was in the past, He Qing would have given up on such a lover. But this person was different. She was obsessed with him like crazy and wanted to spend the rest of her life with him. The Grim Reaper? In this world, there was nothing that money could not buy. In just a few days, some information about the Grim Reaper appeared in front of her. He Qing read word by word and finally understood what those masters meant. Those who were on the Grim Reaper's record book were destined to die. No one could save such a person. Unless the Grim Reaper was willing to go against the heavenly Tao for him. However, the Grim Reaper was a god who walked between the human world and the underworld. She had always been selfless. How could she go against the heavenly Tao for an ordinary human? He Qing was in despair for a moment. But she wanted to see the so-called Grim Reaper. Once again, she disturbed the master and voiced out her thoughts. "You want to see the Grim Reaper?" The master's expression changed. What a joke. What did the Grim Reaper represent? A living person would not see the Grim Reaper. This was the rule for thousands of years. He felt that he had not lived long enough. He Qing was not surprised at the master's rejection. She smiled coldly and said, "Master Du, your grandson who is in kindergarten is playing in my house now. He is waiting for Grandpa to bring him home." Master Du's expression changed when he heard that. In his line of work, it had always been difficult to have children. His grandson was the only son left behind by his son who had an accident. He Qing threatened him with this and he had no room to reject her. Master Du regretted it now. He Qing was a lunatic. He should have rejected her when she came to find him. But it was too late now. She had her eyes on him. Master Du said coldly, "In that case, I'll go with you." He Qing smiled, "Thank you, Master Du. When I meet the Grim Reaper, I will naturally send your grandson back." Master Du said in a deep voice, "But let me make it clear first. A living person can't see the Grim Reaper. Madam don't lose your luck. Furthermore, this old man can only give it a try. Whether or not the Grim Reaper is willing to show himself, this old man cannot guarantee." He Qing was noncommittal and said faintly, "Master Du doesn't need to worry about this." She didn't know that her every move had long been known by others. Gu Shengyin had no intention of meeting her at all. She thought for a moment. It had been a few months since she last saw Qiao Zhihe. She wondered how little Crane was doing. Qiao Zhihe was painting in his room. Now, he was already 17 years old. His figure had already matured, and his handsome face always carried a faint smile. Anyone who saw him would praise him for being such a handsome child. At this moment, a delicate rose was blooming under his brush. The flower was as red as fire, and its unrestrained passion seemed to pour out from the paper. Chapter 1408. The young master of the Qiao family didn't study financial management, but chose art. When Qiao Zhihe said his intention, he was opposed by his family. But in the end, Father Qiao and Mother Qiao couldn't persuade their son. It was useless to force them, as long as their son was happy. A gust of cold wind came from the open window, and Qiao Zhihe's gentle eyes showed a touch of surprise. Death's sister. Sure enough, when he turned around, a familiar figure appeared in his room. He had always called her Death's sister, because he once asked Gu Xingyin for her name, but Gu Xingyin didn't tell him. The name of a god was like a spell, and must not be told to others easily. But Gu Xingyin didn't tell Qiao Zhihe because she didn't know the name of the original body. The original body seemed to be the death god from the beginning of her memories, and humans also called her death god. She didn't have a name. Naturally, she couldn't tell Qiao Zhihe what her name was. Gu Xingyin looked at the cluster of gorgeous roses on the drawing paper and praised, "Very beautiful." Qiao Zhihe heard this and laughed. Gu Xingyin looked at him and wanted to say something, but suddenly her face changed. She seemed to see something on Qiao Zhihe's body. Her heart moved, and the record book in her hand automatically flipped, and on the third page, the 3 words Qiao Zhihe appeared. How could this be? Gu Xingyin stared at the name on the book, and her heart was full of confusion and shock. Death's sister. Death's sister? Qiao Zhihe called her several times before she came back to her senses. Gu Xingyin came back to her senses and saw Qiao Zhihe. For a moment, she didn't want to face this lively face. She hurriedly said, "Something came up, see you next time." Before her voice fell, she had already disappeared from the room. Qiao Zhihe's smile froze on his face. The corners of his lips slowly relaxed, and he felt his heart suddenly become empty. She was a god, and he was a mortal. That was someone she would never be able to catch in her life. Qiao Zhihe slowly returned to the front of the table and picked up the brush again. He slowly added the remaining colors to the flame-like roses. It was just that the enthusiasm that seemed to surge out seemed to have faded a lot. Gu Xingyin flew to the top of the mountain alone. She moved her left hand and finally flipped open the record book. She clearly saw a line of words on it. Qiao Zhihe, male, 17 years old, died in a car accident on July 14, 2330. The 14th of July, the day when the gates of hell would open, was just 2 months away. Why couldn't she understand? Why was there no news about Qiao Zhihe in her record book? Why did such words suddenly appear? It was impossible for the Grim Reaper's record book to be wrong. That was, Qiao Zhihe would indeed die in 2 months. Gu Xingyin sat at the top of the mountain for an entire night. The next day, she became the cold Grim Reaper again. The system said, "Host, don't be sad." Gu Xingyin felt strange and asked, "Why would I be sad?" The system said, "Your lover is about to die in this world, but host, you will meet again in the next world." So, Gu Xingyin continued the system's words, "So I'm not sad, don't worry." The system didn't say anything else. Even if they were lovers, if the child they watched grow up was about to die, they would also feel uncomfortable, right? Was she really not sad? Not necessarily, right? Chapter 1409. After a few days, Gu Xingyin went to see Qiao Zhihe again. The 17-year-old little Nian wore a white shirt. He was so clean that he looked like a handsome young man from a manga. When he saw Gu Xingyin, Qiao Zhihe was delighted. He showed his latest painting to Gu Xingyin. It was a bunch of sunflowers that bloomed in the sun. Gu Xingyin looked at the painting for a long time. Qiao Zhihe's painting looked a little different from his person. No matter who saw this young man, they would think that he was the kind of gentleman described in the books. But in his painting, there was no such temperament at all. Instead, it was very passionate and unrestrained, as if he was always pursuing something tirelessly. He was a very talented painter. Not only Gu Xingyin thought so, but many old seniors in the painting world also thought highly of this young junior. Even Xiao Zhihe's parents, after seeing the talent that their son showed, never asked him to go into business again. Such a pure artistic soul was born to paint. It's a beautiful painting. Gu Xingyin praised. Xiao Zhihe heard his praise, and his eyes showed a deep smile. Gu Xingyin turned to look at him. The young man had a vibrant smile, and his smile could easily infect others. She suddenly had a desire to confide in him. "Little he, do you want to take a walk in the mountains with me?" she asked. Xiao Zhihe nodded. In fact, as long as he was with Sister Death, he was willing to go anywhere. Gu Xingyin reached out to him. Xiao Zhihe's eyebrows trembled, and then he reached out his slender hand and gently put it on the black glove. A cold feeling passed through the glove. Sister Death's body was always so cold, just like. Xiao Zhihe turned his head and looked at Death, who was always hidden in the hood. It was as if Sister Death's entire divine spirit gave people the feeling. His body flew up lightly. Xiao Zhihe floated in the void and looked at the lights below his feet. He was no stranger to such experiences. But no matter how many times he experienced it, he still held the same anticipation and joy. Because it was only at this time that he could get so close to Sister Death. Gu Xingyin really took him to a mountain. On a summer night, the heat of the day had faded away. Coupled with the cool breeze at the top of the mountain, it was very refreshing. Xiao Zhihe looked around. It was very dark, and the only light was the brilliant lights in the distance. That was the city he lived in. From such a distance, he could only see an endless belt of light. Seeing him subconsciously approach her, Gu Xingyin thought that Xiao Zhihe did not dare to approach her because it was too dark. She thought for a moment, and her divine sense moved slightly. In an instant, countless tiny specks of light rose from the forest and wandered around the two of them. Although these lights were weak, when combined together, they still illuminated the place. Xiao Zhihe's eyes widened. He looked at the sky full of fireflies in shock and was speechless for a long time. He had never seen such a beautiful scene. He turned sideways and saw that the cloak on the head of the person beside him had been taken off, and the black sickle in her hand had disappeared without a trace. Sister Death? His face was a little red. But Gu Xingyin only thought that he was excited because of the beautiful scene in front of him. Chapter 14:10. She knew very well that those in the art industry were obsessed with the pursuit of beauty. When Xiao Zhihe saw Gu Xingyin's face, the surging emotions in his heart were knocked back by a basin of cold water. Seeing that the other party did not ask him, he took back the words that were about to come out of his mouth. The two sat quietly like this, with the dancing fireflies beside them. When they looked up, there were bright stars. Gu Xingyin suddenly fell back and lay in the grass. Xiao Zhihe looked at her with some surprise. In his mind, Sister Death's words and deeds were like the most rigorous dogma training. Every move, even the posture of standing, was very strict. This was the first time he had seen her act so carelessly. But at the same time, a secret delight rose in his heart because of this. Sister Grim Reaper seemed to be more humane like this. He imitated Gu Xingyin's action, using his hands as a pillow and lying down on the grass. Looking at the sky like this, it was completely impossible to distinguish which were fireflies and which were stars. Gu Xingyin suddenly spoke, "I don't remember how many years I have been deaf, and I don't remember how many souls have entered the underworld from my hands." Xiao Zhihe did not understand what she wanted to express, but he could see that Gu Xingyin wanted to talk to someone. Therefore, he did not interrupt or ask any questions. Instead, he listened to her quietly. Gu Xingyin's cold voice was like a clear spring flowing slowly in such a summer night, which could easily soothe the last trace of heat in people's hearts. "You are the only one who can see me as a living person." Xiao Zhihe couldn't help but smile. To Sister Death, he was also a very special existence. This recognition made him very happy. I have seen all kinds of people facing death. Little Crane, let me ask you a question. Xiao Zhihe focused his attention. What's the question, Sister Death? Gu Xingyin heard her own calm voice. If you knew that you were about to die one day, what would you think? Her voice was too calm, so calm that it made Xiao Zhihe think that she really just wanted to ask a question on a whim. He thought about it very seriously, and finally said, I might be very unwilling, right? Gu Xingyin repeated, unwilling? Yeah. Xiao Zhihe smiled and said, I'm only 17 years old. My dream is to become a famous painter. I've just started walking on this path, and I haven't proven to my parents that I've made the right choice. My parents only have one son, and if I die, they will be very sad. I haven't. He suddenly stopped talking. Finally, he said, I still want to live for a long, long time. Gu Xingyin just listened quietly. She heard that Xiao Zhihe still had some unfinished words, but that should be a little secret of a teenager, so she did not ask. Xiao Zhihe softly said the words that he didn't say out loud in his heart, I haven't confessed to the person I like yet, and I probably won't confess to her either. But I will try my best to live for a long, long time so that I can spend more time with her. Gu Xingyin turned her head and looked at the young man's bright eyes under the light of the fireflies, which were full of vigor and vitality. Such a young man's life would end in 2 months. Chapter 14:11. Gu Xingyin suddenly felt uncomfortable. She stood up irritably and said, Shall I send you back? Xiao Zhihe listened to her cold voice and watched her put on the hood again. He was disappointed. He felt that it was rare to see Sister Death like that. Now, she had become cold and unapproachable. Gu Xingyin sent Xiao Zhihe home. She did not talk to the young man as she felt that she could not bear to see his bright eyes again. He Qing was almost done with her preparations. Master Du had already set up the altar and prepared the offerings for the Grim Reaper. He put on his robe and lit 3 incense sticks before he started to chant. He Qing stood aside quietly. She did not understand what Master Du was chanting and she did not care about it. All she wanted was a result. A strong wind blew in the night and extinguished the incense sticks in Master Du's hands. Master Du lit the incense sticks again and continued to chant. This time, the wind that blew from the void was even stronger, blowing the offerings to the ground. Master Du's expression changed completely. He respectfully bowed 3 times to the altar before walking in front of He Qing. Madam He, as you can see, Death doesn't want to see you. Although He Qing did not know what happened, she saw the offerings being blown away by the strange wind. She said coldly, Death doesn't want to see me? Master Du did not say anything. He had made it very obvious. He Qing's expression changed as she thought of her lover who could not stand up anymore. When she thought about how he would leave her soon, He Qing felt that she could not bear it. She suddenly sneered, she doesn't want to see me? Isn't Death supposed to pick up the dead? Then I'll ask her to pick you up. She waved her hand behind her, and a few well-built men dragged a person forward. This person was a homeless man she had found by the roadside. Master Du had already guessed He Qing's plan. His expression changed and he looked at He Qing as if she was a lunatic. Madam He, this is a great sin. You can't do it. You'll have to pay for it in your next life. He Qing turned a deaf ear. Sin? Haven't I, He Qing, committed enough sins in my life? If you want to pay me back in your next life, then we'll talk about it in your next life. I don't care what happens in the next life, but in this life, I can't lose him. Master Du looked at the crazy woman and regretted for the umpteenth time in his heart. Why did he set foot on this pirate ship? Now, his heart was filled with despair. In this matter, he was in cahoots with He Qing. When the heavenly Tao came to settle the score, he would not be able to escape. He closed his eyes, not wanting to see what was about to happen. He couldn't stop her. He knew that if he didn't cooperate with He Qing, this crazy woman would really hurt his grandson. When Gu Xingyin saw the notebook light up and saw the locations and people displayed on it, a huge flame of anger rose in his heart. He Qing. She actually dared to do that. He Qing coldly looked at the person who had fallen to the ground and was no longer breathing. Fresh blood flowed out from his body and meandered to her feet like an evil yet beautiful chain. Suddenly, a strong wind blew in the quiet darkness and the altar for death was blown to the ground. Master Du's face was filled with despair. Death is angry. Chapter 14:12. He Qing still looked indifferent, but the gun in her sleeve had its safety off, showing that she wasn't as calm as she appeared to be. A black figure appeared in the night sky. She was wearing a large black cloak and her face could not be seen clearly. The huge black scythe exuded a chilling aura under the moonlight. It was a summer night, but everyone felt as if they had fallen into an ice cave. Master Du, the only one who could see her, knelt down immediately. He Qing guessed that the Grim Reaper had arrived from the reaction of the people around and Master Du's appearance. However, she could not see anything. She said loudly, "Death God, are you here, Death God?" The surroundings were silent. Even the bodyguards that He Qing brought along were all tall and strong. They were all like little quails at this moment. They could not wait to curl up into a ball and shiver. They only found a normal job as bodyguards. They did not say that they would have to face such a supernatural event. No one answered He Qing. He Qing suddenly walked towards Master Du. "Master Du, you have a way to see the Grim Reaper, right? Think of a way to let me see him too." He Qing said softly. Master Du shook his head in fear and did not dare to speak. Because he could see that the Grim Reaper had appeared behind He Qing. However, He Qing did not know anything. She even took out her gun and pointed it at Master Du. "Quick. Otherwise, I'll send you to see him. Let her see." Master Du was shivering when a cold female voice rang in his ears. If Master Du were to describe this voice, it would probably be like quenched ice. It would make people shiver uncontrollably. It turned out that the Grim Reaper was a female. Master Du thought in a daze and was shocked. He quickly opened his eyes and took out a yellow talisman paper from his arms. Then, he bit his middle finger and drew a mysterious rune on it. When the rune was formed, He Qing did not know if it was an illusion, but she felt that she seemed to see a golden light on it. Then, Master Du took the rune and stuck it on He Qing's eyes. When the rune came into contact with He Qing's eyes, it suddenly seemed to merge into her eyes and disappeared. At the same time, He Qing realized that the world in her eyes had changed. She turned around and was shocked by the figure in front of her. A dark figure exuding an eerie cold aura was standing very close to him. Subconsciously, He Qing took a few steps back. She looked at the figure in front of her. His appearance was exactly the same as the legendary death of the underworld. Behind her, the homeless man who had just died was looking at her with hatred. It was his soul. No matter how bold He Qing was, she was still a little fearful after encountering such a situation. But she didn't show it on her face. She looked at Gu Shengyin. "Are you the Grim Reaper? I want to ask you to do something for me. You can pay any price you want." She could see death, but her bodyguards couldn't. They looked at their boss speaking to the void with a serious face. If it were any other time, they would definitely find this scene a little funny, but at this moment, no one could laugh. Because it was truly terrifying. Gu Shengyin looked at He Qing coldly. He Qing only felt that the icy gaze was like an icicle, about to freeze her. Chapter 14:13. Then, He Qing heard an extremely cold voice coming from the opposite side. "Human, what right do you have to say such things?" It was an undisguised contempt, as if the other party was talking to an insignificant ant. Because of her family background and wealth, He Qing had never met anyone who dared to speak to her in such a manner. She instinctively felt displeased, but when she thought of the other party's identity, she suppressed her unwillingness. Yes, the other party was a deity. Everything she had was nothing in front of the other party. The deity's power was too strong. He Qing felt suffocated and regretted her decision to sit down for a moment. But the next moment, she thought of the man's weak appearance and her heart hardened again. She stared straight at Gu Shengyin. "Then I won't beg you. How about I threaten you directly? If you don't agree, I'll kill one person a day. Master Du almost fainted when he heard these words. How dare she say such things? Was she really not afraid of retribution? He Qing sneered. I've looked for countless masters to tell my fortune. In this life, my destiny is extremely rich and I'll live a long life. So what if I kill someone in front of you? The Grim Reaper can't do anything to me, right? She had made a lot of preparations during this period. At least she knew that her life was extremely good, so no matter what happened, she would be able to turn misfortunes into blessings. This was because she was protected by the golden light of merit. For someone like her, even a deity would not dare to go against the heavenly Tao and do anything to her. This was also the reason why she was so fearless. As for the next life, she had once thought that her next life might be very miserable. But what did it matter? She was only He Qing in this life. It was enough for her to live well in this life. Who would care about the next life? Gu Xingyin said, your merit in this life is accumulated from the good deeds you did in your previous life. Why do you not care about the good fortune? She did not seem to care about He Qing's threat at all. He Qing naturally heard it and said impatiently, what I want to do is my own business. You just have to promise me that you won't let him die. Master Du deeply regretted that he had said those words when He Qing came to find him. He Qing's actions were simply courting death. The Grim Reaper couldn't do anything to her in this life, but what about after she died? After her death, her soul would belong to the underworld. At that time, if the Grim Reaper wanted to deal with her, it would be a piece of cake. Gu Xingyin looked at her and said, life has its own destiny. No one can save him. He Qing said sternly, you're lying. Master Du said that as long as you're willing, you don't have to take away his soul. Master Du could feel the cold gaze on him. He could not help but shrink back. At this moment, he was already thinking about how he would die and come back to life after falling into the underworld. Gu Xingyin did not even look at He Qing. She turned and left. Life and death have their own destiny. The heavens will not spare anyone. Her meaning was clear. She couldn't save him. Even if she could not risk being punished by the heavens to save him. He Qing's heart hardened. She pulled the trigger and shot directly at Gu Xingyin. This time, Master Du fainted directly. However, in He Qing's eyes, those bullets passed through the Grim Reaper's body and hit the opposite wall. The other party did not even want to lower himself to her level and disappeared in an instant. Chapter 14:14. He Qing felt despair. For the first time, she felt powerless. But she wasn't the only one. As the Grim Reaper, Gu Xingyin couldn't do anything when she saw Qiao Zhihe's death approaching. The only thing Gu Xingyin could do was to spend more time with Qiao Zhihe in the last 2 months. Every time she went to see Qiao Zhihe, she could see his happy smile. She thought that she should be Qiao Zhihe's best friend in this life. Qiao Zhihe wasn't introverted, but he tended to be quiet. When he had nothing to do, he would travel alone with his drawing board to find inspiration. From Gu Xingyin's observation, she was likely to be one of Qiao Zhihe's best friends. Sometimes, Gu Xingyin would look at him from afar without showing herself. She watched him draw for free on this drawing board in the square where there were many children and adults' windmills. But he never drew portraits. Gu Xingyin saw that he had studied portraits for so many years, but she had never seen him draw portraits except for the copies in the classroom. Some people said that portraits were Qiao Zhihe's shortcoming. He knew that he wasn't good at it, so he never touched it. But Gu Xingyin didn't think so. Perhaps in her eyes, her family members were always the best. She felt that Qiao Zhihe must have his reasons for not drawing portraits. It wasn't that he couldn't draw well. Another month passed. There was still a month before Qiao Zhihe's death. And that man's condition was getting worse. He Qing's patience seemed to have reached its limit. People started to die in the city. It wasn't an accident. The murderer didn't have a target. It seemed that he would kill when he wanted to. There wasn't a high level of modus operandi, but the police couldn't find the murderer. Every time they investigated a case, they couldn't find any key clues. It was as if something had erased those clues from their minds. Gu Xingyin felt a chill in her heart. Because of He Qing's fate, she couldn't die. She couldn't be imprisoned. She couldn't be caught. What about others? Those who were waiting for a hot meal after work died innocently in He Qing's hands. Yes, those names were recorded in Gu Xingyin's record book. It showed that their lifespans ended on that day. Gu Xingyin might be able to comfort herself that even without He Qing's actions, they might still have died from a fall or a car accident. However, Gu Xingyin found it ridiculous. No matter how she looked at it, those people seemed to be paying for something. This was because Gu Xingyin had clearly seen the changes in He Qing's record book when she made her move. Some people's fates changed with her actions. The power of virtue in He Qing's body was also slowly decreasing. However, at this rate, she could still be free and unfettered for countless years before the golden light of virtue disappeared. Over the course of countless years, who knew how many more souls would have died under her hands? The most hateful thing was that every time He Qing killed a person, she would arrogantly write a sentence with blood, "Salute to the Grim Reaper." The police thought that it was a declaration made by the criminal. They thought that it was a provocation to the police. But it wasn't. It was He Qing's provocation to the Grim Reaper. On this day, when Gu Xingyin went to visit Xiao Zhihe, she saw him sitting on the bed alone. Chapter 14-15. Even when he saw Gu Xingyin's arrival, he didn't show much joy. "Sister Death, you can see a person's lifespan, right?" Xiao Zhihe asked. Gu Xingyin's heart skipped a beat, but she nodded lightly. Xiao Zhihe's face showed a dazed expression. "One of my senior brothers, a very talented person. He had already received an admission notice from Songlin Country's Royal Academy this year, but when he returned home last night, he was shot." Gu Xingyin lowered her eyes. She knew that boy. She had gone to fetch him last night. The very cheerful and bright young man was beside her, crying as he looked at his own body. She had asked him to take a look at his parents. That person kept crying that he was unfilial and that he had let down his parents. Gu Xingyin looked at the record book in her hand. Actually, that person shouldn't have died yesterday. Originally, he should have gone abroad to study, then returned to his country and become a somewhat famous modern artist. He should have died at the age of 40 from liver cancer. But He Qing made a move. Just like she said, she would kill one person a day without a goal until the death god compromised. The power of merit in her body was protecting her. Every time she killed someone, her merit would decrease by 1. The power of merit that was originally enough to protect her in this lifetime was slowly decreasing. According to her current squandering, it was very likely that it could only protect her for 3 more years. But in 3 years, how many people would die by her hands? Gu Xingyin didn't reflect on the underworld. But in the eyes of the underworld's gods, all of this was nothing. In the lives of mortals, even if this lifetime was over, there would still be a next lifetime. In their eyes, this He Qing was so arrogant now. After she died, she would naturally pay back all the sins on her body. And for those who died by her hands and didn't get to enjoy their lives, the heavenly Tao would naturally compensate them in the next lifetime. So, this was all a cycle. In the hearts of the gods who didn't have emotions and desires, this wasn't a big deal. But Gu Xingyin couldn't bear it. She came to see Xiao Zhihe today to say goodbye to him. "Then Big Sister Death, my parents. How long can they live?" Xiao Zhihe was silent for a long time before he asked carefully. Gu Xingyin paused for a moment before replying, "The lifespan of a mortal is a heavenly secret. It cannot be revealed casually." Xiao Zhihe was somewhat disappointed. Gu Xingyin thought of what she was going to do and said to Xiao Zhihe, "Don't think too much. Your parents are kind people. They will have a happy life." Xiao Zhihe's eyes lit up. Gu Xingyin looked into his eyes and her expression softened. But Xiao Zhihe couldn't see it. He could only hear the other party saying softly, "You too, little crane. You will become a very famous painter and live a peaceful and wealthy life." Gu Xingyin suddenly stood up and said to Xiao Zhihe, "I will be staying in the underworld for a long time. I have some things to take care of, so I won't be back for a long time. Xiao Zhihe was a bit disappointed, but he still nodded. He always knew that he and Big Sister Death were people from two different worlds. He looked at the other party's back. A pair of magnificent black wings stretched out and she disappeared into the darkness. He didn't know that this would be the last time he saw her in this life. Chapter 14:16. Host, have you really thought it through? The system asked. Gu Xingyin smiled and said, of course. She paused for a moment and said, I guess I can't be a qualified god anymore. I can't watch those living humans die. Even if they have reincarnation and afterlife, they won't be the same person in this life, right? The system said, Host, not all gods are like this. It's just that in this world, even the heavenly axiom isn't perfect. The system only dared to say something like this because it was outside the rules. Otherwise, it would definitely be noticed by the heavenly axiom. Gu Xingyin looked at the unchanging sky of the underworld and said to the system, I'm sorry. She knew that her decision was a little capricious. The mission in this world wasn't difficult, but she didn't know if the mission could be considered completed. The system comforted her, it's okay, host. As long as you're happy. Gu Xingyin, she didn't know why, but the originally serious atmosphere made her feel like laughing because of the system's comforting words. She thought that the system she met was probably the most tolerant, gentle, and good-tempered system in the world. She chose a place. Yes, it was in the underworld, under the tree where she often sat in a daze. The fiery red maple tree rustled and 2 leaves fell on her shoulders. The red and black contrasted with each other, creating a stunning beauty. Gu Xingyin had already closed her eyes. She placed her hand on the record book in her hand. Her spiritual power entered a very mysterious space through the record book. It was a void, and the darkness was filled with threads of light of all sizes. Some of these threads were thick, some thin, and all of them had different colors. This was the light of destiny of everyone in the record book. Gu Xingyin casually picked up a thread, and a string of information flowed into her mind. Lu Yuan, male, lived a mediocre life, died at the age of 58. She casually let go of the thread and released her spiritual power. She began to search for her target among the thousands of threads. Found it. She focused her gaze, and an illusory giant palm of light behind her grabbed into the darkness. When it came out, there were 2 more threads of light in its hand. There was a huge difference between the 2 rays of light. A very weak blue light flashed. The light was very dim, as if it could be extinguished at any moment. The other was an extremely thick and dazzling golden beam of light. The golden light made many of the surrounding thin threads dim. The owners of these 2 rays of light were called Xiao Zhihe and He Qing. What Gu Xingyin wanted to do today was to defy the will of the heavens. Didn't He Qing use her golden light of virtue to do whatever she wanted? Then she would take away her merit and see what else she could rely on to show off. As for Xiao Zhihe, in any case, she had already defied the mandate of heaven. It was impossible for her to escape the punishment of the heavenly Tao. In that case, it wouldn't be a big deal to defy it one more time. She held the 2 rays of light in her left and right hands, and then a powerful force began to seep into their fates bit by bit. It was not difficult for Xiao Zhihe to do so. Gu Xingyin did not spend much effort to erase the fate inscription on it. However, it was very troublesome for He Qing. Gu Xingyin could even feel that after her spiritual power entered He Qing's light of destiny, it was as if she had fallen into a swamp. It was very difficult for her to move forward.